What's up, Johnny? Happy birthday, man. Today's a big day for you, and I just wanted to make you a little video to let you know that I was thinking about you on your birthday. You're old. You're like almost as old as me.
Yes! Hello everyone on Johnny's vlog. You better subscribe to him.
Do it.
If you don't subscribe to him, then you didn't. And I'll spank you really hard.
I told you no video version.
You said I could vlog.
No, come on.
Hi, I am Johnny Silvestri. I am currently 27 years old.
So this person is called Johnny.
I didn't really hang out or talk to Colleen unless we were talking about her ex-husband.
I have held my tongue for years.
I was personally affected by Josh's grooming.
People create and dedicate accounts to other human beings, and I can kind of hide and be a little bit anonymous.
I really want to come back. I just can't be here now. I gotta go find some kind of peace.
He tried to make it seem like I was a crazy obsessed fan.
Do you still have your text conversations with Josh?
That I can check. It's the whole reason the Trisha stuff came out this week.
She definitely sent him to that guy.
Sometimes I would literally just go to Google and type in like Trisha Paytas nude. Live access has gotten revoked again.
I have a very, very, very firm stance on talking to anyone underage.
People calling out things that Johnny has done and him refusing to acknowledge them.
Oh no, Johnny was in DMs with minors? I was.
I think Johnny is the worst. Johnny actively spent weeks painting a picture for me to believe that I was inferior to him.
You know, just doing the damn thing since I was 17.
His dates that he's saying are lying.
Well, if Johnny is embellishing this stuff about Josh, what else could he potentially be embellishing?
This really isn't the story that I was expecting to be telling today. For nearly 2 months, the Colleen Ballinger saga has been raging across social media, erupting from a damning expose courtesy of Cody Tyler to a series of extensively transparent videos from Adam McIntyre, the surfacing of countless victims, and the shocking non-apology from none other than Colleen Ballinger herself in the form of a 10-minute ukulele song.
All aboard!
I've covered all of this and more in the previous 2 videos in my documentary series on Colleen Ballinger, but I haven't even scratched the surface. This documentary, part 3, was originally intended to be an update as well as a collection of the other stories I didn't have time to cover, like stories like how Colleen Ballinger throws a childhood cancer fundraiser every year, but the money she receives is sent directly to her bank account. Yeah.
Colleen doesn't donate the money, she keeps it, and she's a scammer and a horrible person. She's terrible, and none of you should be supporting her in this cause.
Or the story recently unearthed by April Quio, a former writer's assistant on Colleen's Netflix show Haters Back Off, who alleges that Colleen's racism on the set of that show extended from her demanding, quote, all that Asian shit be removed from an Asian food market, to allegations that Colleen said the N-word to her, a black woman, hard R and all. Classy. Now, this talk was also going to respond to the recent Vanity Fair article, which in my opinion delegitimized itself the second it chose not to reach out to any of the victims. I mean, while I've been writing this, Trisha Paytas has gone on record stating that Colleen Ballinger admitted to her over text that she did send Trisha's nudes photos to fans.
Well, it was confirmed she sent them. She sent me an apology on that Saturday after I made the video. I made the video July 3rd, and then she sent me an apology on like Saturday, July like 8th or 9th. And she's like, yeah, I was a coward. I lied to you. Like, I should have just told you the truth when you asked me about the photos. Like, I was a coward, and that was it.
I also recorded an interview with Oliver, somebody who received disturbing messages from Colleen's brother Trent, as well as Soph, who alleged that Corey DeSoto was racist. I even promised a bombshell interview back in part 2, an exclusive interview with one of the accused, who I will announce later in this doc. But by the end of this, I think you'll all understand why I've been forced to change the original schedule, because there's something crucial that we now have to do. My team and I researched, wrote, and scrapped so many versions of this documentary, planning to cover everything that I just listed until something completely unexpected happened. I became part of this story. I was simply here to help accurately and honestly cover this story as we do with the Swoop doc, help provide missing context, and offer my platform in support to victims to share their stories in their own words. It's why I conducted extensive interviews. But instead of it unfolding like that, the way it should have, I was dragged against my will into a story that I didn't want to be a direct participant in, just a supporter of, and it all started with a 6-hour interview with a man by the name of Johnny Silvestri.
Hi, I am Johnny Silvestri. I am currently 27 years old as of May.
As you might be aware, if you watched the previous 2 parts of this series, Johnny Silvestri is a former tour employee of Colleen Ballinger's who had actually been a Miranda Sings super fan since he was a young teen and years into his adulthood. Now, you might remember him as the man who revealed that Colleen Ballinger was, behind the scenes, planning on writing a script about Ella, one of her biggest fans, because Colleen alleged that Ella was faking her illness just to meet her. Johnny stated, "Okay, Colleen, you want to play? Let's play." You might also remember Johnny as the man who leaked text messages from Colleen Ballinger where she was sharing nude photos of Trisha Paytas to mock her. He has also alleged verbal and emotional abuse at the hands of Corey DeSoto, Colleen Ballinger's best friend and assistant, who allegedly forced Johnny to sleep on a tour bus with a Tempur-Pedic mattress after an argument.
Why would anybody choose to sleep on the bus?
Well,
And I couldn't even have the decency of sleeping in a bed.
And Johnny secure.
I will say, very comfortable, like a little cocoon, Tempur-Pedic. It was nice. It wasn't the worst, but
okay.
You know.
But there's something I've been promising to investigate since part 1 of this series. Johnny has alleged numerous times that he is the victim of grooming at the hands of Joshua David Evans, Colleen Ballinger's ex-husband, in a story that he has characterized as being exactly like Adam McIntyre's story, or even worse. And considering that as recently as July 15th, Johnny was tweeting that Joshua David Evans was a predator who was in fact worse than Colleen Ballinger, and tweeting on July 27th that Joshua was an abuser, my team and I felt it important to get to the bottom of this complex situation and help this man tell his story in a documentary primarily composed of exclusive interviews no one has heard, receipts, and evidence that y'all watching have not been able to see that I believe you deserve to see. Now, there was a point in time where this documentary almost didn't happen at all, and I had to stop, take a breath, and realize exactly what I was sitting on, and I needed some reassurance that I hadn't misinterpreted everything that we found. So I reached out to Adam McIntyre. Why? Because I trust Adam McIntyre, period. And he not only validated our findings 100%, he actually confirmed for me that this story is so much more disturbing than I could ever have imagined. Everything you're about to hear was presented to Adam, first in a call off camera, and then later in an interview that he generously offered while he was on vacation in Paris. Just what were your initial thoughts and your feelings when I was kind of sharing this with you?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for reaching out to me, and secondly, I want to say that I kind of have been crediting myself on how I've been kind of holding myself in this entire situation, and I'm gonna be completely honest, I'm really at my breaking point with everything now, because I dealt with Cody, and I was like, the Cody thing was whatever, like, Cody was untrustworthy, but, like, whenever I think about, like, the Johnny thing and stuff, it felt completely separate to me, and it felt completely different. And then through everything I was, like, kind of being told on the sidelines behind the scenes for the past couple of weeks, I was, like, choosing to, like, side-eye a lot of it, or I was choosing to kind of focus on myself and whatever. And then whenever you reached out to me, first and foremost, like I've said to you privately, I'm so grateful for that, because I was like, Jesus, at least someone's being honest with me. It kind of validated things I had been feeling. It's been the biggest, I don't want to say learning lesson, because I feel like how many more can I have of them within the same situation, but it's been bizarre. I will say that.
Now, I cannot stress enough how serious all of this is. There are real people with real pain. You just saw Adam, a remarkably smart, well-composed young man, brought to tears over this. It's not okay. This is not information that I feel would be right for me to withhold from you and to withhold from the public.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So I'm really sorry that it came at this time. The last thing
You're
I wanted
fine,
to do was
don't worry.
interrupt your beautiful trip to Paris with your family.
You're fine. Don't worry.
He didn't have to do this, but after he heard just how up all of this has been behind the scenes for us, he immediately offered to help corroborate our findings. Adam made me realize that what I've been sitting on is evidence of maybe the biggest, most damaging grift I've ever witnessed on YouTube. And after tirelessly gathering all of this and more, I can tell you there is a devil in Colleen Ballinger's shadow, and his name is Johnny Silvestri. Hi, my name is Swoop. Please allow a brief tone shift that I do at the beginning of all of my documentaries to thank you. And I do have an announcement that I know all of you have been eagerly waiting for, that I had to delay for quite a while we've been in the middle of this. So if you're seeing me for the first time, welcome. I make documentaries and short films on unsolved cases, true crime, and social media influencers who abuse their power and manipulate audiences because, as I always say, it's not drama, it's dangerous. We also dig deeper into the root psychology, and sometimes we take it to Petty University, and I am very excited to finally be able to announce the launch of the new Petty University Valid collection. Y'all, I had no idea which doc this was going to drop in, but I kind of believe the timing today is serendipitous. So I'm going to give you a short story behind the design, and then we will move along. So as many of you know, I'm a fellow DV survivor, and in addition, I have chronic illness and a spine injury that almost took me out. But you all reminded me every single day that through the hard times, there is power when we stay true to our core. And I know so many of you have survived some truly difficult things in life. I just wanted you to have a powerful reminder of that every time you wear this, that you are valid. And so for the hoodies, I created this design of the ribcage on the back. Not just because it's dope, okay? But I wanted to feature the spine, the backbone of who we all are. And I wanted that to be represented. And I'm just gonna read it really quick. It says, I am valid, brave, worthy, powerful, resilient, loved, human, evolving, unique, iconic, authentic, defiant, courageous, inspiring, exquisite, invincible, unstoppable, generous, fearless, passionate, and petty. Because always with the petty. And I also love that when someone else sees you wearing this from the back, they'll also read that message for themselves, okay? So we're spreading that message to everyone. Now, every piece in the collection is 100% cotton, and each piece receives a custom mineral wash to give it that vintage vibe and makes each a one-of-a-kind work of art just like you, because you are valid. So you can tap the link below to grab your Petty University Valid collection, and please do tag me in your outfit pics on Instagram. I love reposting you when you tag me, so please make sure to do it. And I cannot wait for you to get your hands on these pieces. You are going to love them. They're so special to me, so I hope you enjoy. A couple other quick things. I am launching a brand new second channel. Yes, I know, that you can subscribe to right now. I'll be producing entirely new, shorter deep dives on topics that are just mind-bending and fascinate me, as well as things like full-length interviews that are featured in these docs. So I hope you join me over there. That's also linked below. Now, one last thing, and then we'll jump into all of this. A huge thank you to our sponsor today. Without them, this doc isn't possible, and a big thank you to all of you. So one of my absolute favorite things to do is go see live music. Y'all know I'm a musician before I'm anything, and going to shows just has a way of melting all of my stress and making me so happy. And when it comes to getting the perfect seats and the perfect tickets, I go to SeatGeek. With over 28 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app, and hands down, they make getting the perfect seats so incredibly easy. There are more than 70,000 events every single day on SeatGeek, including concerts, sports, festivals, and so much more. I use them every time I grab amazing tickets. Like, I literally just got tickets to see Nothing But Thieves, and I am so excited! With artists like Taylor Swift, the Jonas Brothers, and Beyonce on tour, SeatGeek has you covered. So they take all of the tickets across the web and put them in one place to make sure you are getting a great deal. Each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so look for the green dots. Green means good, red means not so good. And every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee, and SeatGeek is the only site that lets you return your ticket ahead of the event with swaps. So if something comes up and you can't make the show, you're covered. And you know I came through with a discount, okay? You can use my code SWOOP for $20 off any tickets at SeatGeek. All you have to do is tap my link in the description to download the app, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase with promo code SWOOP. So get ready for the best seats you've ever had and enjoy yourself, honey. You deserve it. Okay, back to the doc. I'd like to first give a content heads up. We will be discussing themes of grooming, abuse, gaslighting, manipulation of minors, exploitation, CSA, and DV. Sensitive words and images will be censored per usual, but I just want you to have a heads up. Now, I will be addressing things and making statements that are alleged, as well as presenting verified and corroborating evidence. All opinions or commentary shared today are alleged, and they are heavily educated opinions based on extensive research that neither I nor my team would be sharing if we didn't thoroughly believe them to be accurate. If you want to fact check, please do. I always welcome that. I am not here to tell you what your opinion should be. I'm just providing the research and testimonials that we have pulled from our investigation, and you can do with this information what you will to formulate your own research. As always, y'all know, please do not spread any hate or harass anyone ever. My team and I are presenting all of this with the intent to help people heal and hopefully take some accountability. Please form your own opinion, and I would love to hear it in the comments. And after this, I will be making a personal donation in Johnny Silvestri's name to RAIN, an organization devoted to protecting survivors. Let's begin. You probably guessed that this is going to be a slight departure as far as my normal documentaries go. There won't be any petty university segments today, my apologies, but I'm going to discuss in full transparency the moral conundrum this part of the story has put me in. The information I am about to share in no way diminishes the very real, valid, heartbreaking stories that Adam, Becky, Alex, Oliver, Ella, and others have shared. Not only have they provided a level of transparency that I am in awe of, but their stories have been consistent and verified. What I have to share today further highlights how resilient Adam, Becky, Alex, Oliver, and Ella have been, and underscores the need to continue to focus the attention on them and not be swayed by those who seek to manipulate the truth. What I'm about to say, I take very seriously. From what my team and I have discovered, we have found that Johnny Silvestri has lied to me, appears to have falsified evidence, withheld information from all of you that changes the context of what he has alleged, and has participated in profoundly disturbing and inappropriate group chats with minors, contents of which shook me to my core, unlike anything I've covered on my platform. I'm talking about group chats that involved alcohol, SUL discussions, and legitimate grooming. It is our belief that we may be on the verge of uncovering a dark underground grooming ring, and Johnny, allegedly, was a part of this, all while lying about his level of participation. He has also downloaded Trisha Paytas' nude photos as an adult, unprovoked, and sent them in text as well, something that he admitted for the first time in my interview. In our opinion, he has intentionally exploited the stories of other victims without their consent when they repeatedly asked him not to, and has allegedly been characterizing people as victims for his own benefit who not only do not think of themselves as victims, but have told me on the record that Johnny Silvestri scares them. He's even scared me. Multiple people have come forward to say this, and you will hear from them today. I found myself in a position where I was trying to investigate the allegations of a grown-ass man, Johnny Silvestri, who quite literally, many times, victim-shamed and victim-blamed domestic survivors publicly while perpetuating the myth of mutual abuse. And he continued the victim blaming to my face in our interview.
He actively chose to remain in this relationship. He had so many outs. He didn't propose for like 9 years. Why did you enter a marriage that was so toxic if you knew it was so bad? You must have wanted something out of it, and it bit you in the ass. He fucked around and found out, and now he's just upset about it.
I have survived brutal DV. He knows that. Saying a survivor of domestic f***ed around and found out because they didn't leave the relationship is vile. And yet I still tried to extend grace, and I'm still trying to do it to this day. Now, for brief context about me, as this will apply later, I am a survivor of being textbook groomed as a child by 2 men vastly older than me, which resulted in me being raped and repeatedly sexually abused for years. And as valid as I am not a perfect victim. There's no such thing. But this isn't about John being perfect either. As I discovered, this is about him manipulating the public on what a victim even is. And that's not fair to Adam, Becky, Alex, Ella, Oliver, and countless other victims, and I will keep highlighting them. Johnny's actions do not invalidate them, but his actions hurt them, and it breaks my heart. And on top of that, according to testimony provided by Adam, Johnny Silvestri, from what we've seen, has knowingly tried to manipulate multiple content creators like H3, Ethan and Hila, and Olivia, Lily, and Jesse, and me, in an attempt to use my platform to center a false narrative that he is telling the truth when it could not be any further from it. And throughout all of this discovery, my team and I keep coming back to one simple question: why? Why do this? Why lie? Why manipulate people's stories to the point that they are afraid of you? Why lie to all of the victims? We already saw what Cody Tyler did to Adam. It was awful. Did Colleen Ballinger manipulate him to do this? I don't know. Is her web so insidious that he's now doing her dirty work by harming victims? And why manipulate me to where I now have to talk about this because he knows that I will not lie for him? Which leads me to the final shocking revelation I needed to address before breaking down just how utterly disturbing Johnny Silvestri's web of lies appears to be. It's the part where I became a part of this story. Johnny Silvestri has been trying to weaponize my 6-hour interview with him that's on the record. He's doing this in private to other victims of this story as proof that his story is, and I'm not making this up, more important than the other victims of Colleen Ballinger's story. Source: Adam McIntyre.
It just, everything he did was a slap in the face, and it was always something he could do better. Like, as recently as when you did your interview with him, like, he on social media was hinting it in a way that the Reddit on all these different forums were picking up on the fact that he was saying that, well, Swoop wanted to talk to him for 6 hours. I was on Twitch one day and people were like, Adam, how long were you speaking to Swoop for? And I was like, only 45 minutes or something like that. And people were like, whoa. And I was like, what do you mean? And they were like, is that all? And I was like, well, yeah, I got asked questions and I answered them and it was 45 minutes. And they were like, oh, well, Johnny's story is definitely bigger because Johnny is saying how he was on for 6 hours and Swoop wants to do more. It was framed to us like we are the inferior people in this story because you wanted to speak to Johnny for so long. There's one other person who I had a lengthy conversation with, and I know they'll never go on the record with it, but we had a call where we were like, it's almost like Swoop is being weaponized against us, that like Swoop didn't want to speak to us for 6 hours because we weren't as important, because that was how it was phrased. So I think it's just that he is better than us in every single way.
Let me speak to that right now. And thank you for sharing that with me. I have been feeling like Johnny has been trying to manipulate me, gaslight me, weaponize me to the point where it has made me feel like I've been brought into this story when I was never supposed to be a part of this story, just someone from the outside offering my platform to help amplify your stories if you wanted me to. That's the only intention that I've ever had here. I hope people will notice Johnny pretty immediately after went and tweeted that he had a 6-hour interview with me. I didn't like it. I didn't comment on it. I didn't retweet it, and that was for a very specific reason because, number one, I felt like him saying 6 hours was going to try to stir up some narrative that somehow his story is more important. I've never felt that way. To feel like I've been weaponized against you, against any of the other victims makes me absolutely sick. That interview went for 6 hours because Johnny talked in so many circles. He insulted me at times, and it was the most difficult interview I have ever done. I believe that Johnny thinks that he manipulated me enough that he got away with it. Based on the testimony and evidence that Adam has provided me, on top of the verified paper trail of lies, deceit, and his disgusting display of victim shaming to my face, he is hurting real people. He's hurting me. And based on this final interview I did with Adam, I can safely say that by the end of this documentary, all of you are gonna have the clearest picture imaginable of who Johnny Silvestri really is. Now, the thing is, I've been talking to Johnny Silvestri and collecting interviews with him as far back as mid-June 2023. I've regrettably spent more time interviewing Johnny than anyone else on the planet has. I had an hour and 4 minutes of audio from 2 Twitter interviews and apparently an infamous 6-hour Zoom interview. Combine that with the phone call, the messages sent, the very public support I gave Johnny, even in light of messages I did not agree with, like referring to racism, ableism, and homophobia as bullshit. That's a smaller issue. That's just icing on the cake. Even in light of his past racist apologist posts that he's made that we don't even have time to cover, I can't stress enough just how many attempts I have made to support Johnny. So, to start this off, I think it's time to quote something Johnny once said about his best friend of 10 years, Tim Connolly, a massive creep who has also been accused of some truly heinous things. And you know what? I'm gonna swap Tim's name out for Johnny. So, Johnny Silvestri, I saw you were begging for the attention and you're in luck because I have a lot of eyes on me right now. I decided to do something kind and give you what you've been asking for. It's been a long time coming. I just need to say this directly from the beginning. During our investigation, we discovered the very real possibility that Johnny Silvestri doctored evidence, and he may have done it intentionally to manipulate the narrative. This discovery shocked me. It is one of the reasons that I went quiet on social media. I know a lot of you noticed, and it derailed my entire upload schedule, which isn't fair to you who love the content, and it's not fair to me and my platform. Early on, I directly asked Joshua David Evans himself to provide me with full receipts of his Twitter DM history with Johnny Silvestri, fully prepared to believe that if someone was going to delete DMs out of the two of them, it would probably be Josh, right? Wrong. Now, full transparency, Joshua David Evans had DM'd me right after part 1 of my series dropped. It was unsolicited. I had no plans of reaching out to him at the time, and I know that he has done some sketchy shit, and believe me, we are going to address it. But as is standard practice for an investigation, I've been in communication with Joshua to see if he has evidence to corroborate his own claims. But before I even did that, in my continual efforts to support Johnny at the time, I informed Johnny that Josh had reached out and that I would be speaking with him. And I told Johnny on Twitter, Instagram, and in our interview. There might be a road where I speak with Joshua to try to get to the truth. If there was anything that you specifically would want either me to ask Josh, or if you wanted to ask him right now on camera.
Yeah, and I appreciate that so much. I mean, you even mentioned the other day, if I had any questions I had for him, like what would they be? When I sat and thought about it, nothing.
I didn't have to tell Johnny, but I did. And so when I asked Josh for his Twitter DM history with Johnny, he sent me a screen recording from top to bottom of 20 total DMs between 2012 and 2016 when they had stopped speaking. 14 of those messages were from Johnny to Joshua, and the remaining 6 messages were replies from Joshua answering 2 of Johnny's questions, meaning Joshua only ever answered Johnny twice in 4 years. Once to a public question Johnny asked him on Twitter, and the other to a question about a show that Joshua was playing. The entire exchange also began with Johnny initiating the conversation by telling Joshua that he was depressed and in need of guidance back in December of 2012, which was very upsetting and sad to see. I never want to see somebody depressed. Now, Joshua did not respond, which is not at all what I expected after talking to Johnny for 6 hours about this. I was expecting to see like tons of just back and forth message exchanges since Johnny said that they had a tight-knit relationship. Can you tell me about how many times you would estimate that you hung out with Josh in person?
He would say stuff to me like, oh my God, come to California for my show. And I'd be like, are you serious? And he'd be like, yeah, come on down. And I'd be like, whoa, sick. You can ask anybody. He would be like, oh yeah, me and Johnny, we're gonna take over the world. We're gonna make it big together someday. This guy is so cool and so selfless. Like, what a good person.
Johnny has accused Joshua of grooming and being a predator, worse than Colleen. Those are serious allegations.
Is Josh someone that you would turn to with personal things like your sexuality?
Yeah.
And then you guys started texting like on a one-on-one basis?
Not super regularly, because I didn't want to abuse it. I didn't want to lose this privilege, because they like gave you little things, but then would kind of hold it over your head, even if they didn't say it to your face.
Now, Johnny did say the majority of their relationship was held publicly over Twitter, not privately, so we needed to look beyond the DMs.
How often did you talk? I guess I'm just more curious of the dynamic between you two.
It was more so like Twitter-based. It was more of a public relationship.
But because Johnny deleted most of his old tweets and he admitted that to us, this is hard to fully investigate. Except if you search for correspondence between @JoshuaDTown and Johnny's old username @JohnnySilvestri, you can find that virtually every interaction between the two of them began with Johnny tweeting at Josh and Josh responding, meaning that even in a public setting, Joshua was rarely initiating contact. Now, as we know in the definition of grooming, I've covered it many times, isolation is one of the key tactics a groomer will use to isolate their victims from their support system. It's very much what one man who groomed and sexually abused me did. He told me my family would disown me if I said anything, and it worked because I stayed silent for him for so long. So I fully anticipated that we would be seeing private instances of Josh attempting to isolate Johnny. In reality, there was so much lack of response from Josh. We became suspicious that Josh must have deleted a lot of his old DMs to distort what happened. There was basically like no other explanation that made sense to us, except Johnny had told me in the interview that he was an open book.
Yeah, I'm an open book.
So in a phone call, I asked Johnny to send me the same backlog of Twitter DMs that Joshua had already sent without telling Johnny that Joshua had already sent a copy. Neither of them knew about the other, to keep it clean, and I'm sure they're both realizing this right now as they see this. Now, Johnny hesitated at first. Joshua did not. And Johnny asked me what exactly I was looking for, which I thought was odd, and I said that I wanted to see if Joshua said anything inappropriate in those messages. Johnny said okay, and we ended the call. Then he texted me something weird. He said, can I see DMs if I blocked someone? Now, he already knew the answer to this, so we felt like he was maybe buying time or thinking of a reason why he couldn't send them. That was followed by wait, never mind, and a few minutes later he sent screenshots. But when I received them, multiple DMs were actually missing on Johnny's screenshots. That wait, never mind that he texted me, we believe that's the moment that he realized he could manipulate the messages. Allegedly. We believe that based on this information that Johnny Silvestri likely deleted most of his own messages, significantly altering his actual conversations with Josh, making it look like Josh was highly engaged in DMing him, when in fact, most of the time, it was Johnny sending messages with no reply. This is something that Johnny has chosen not to share with the public. Why? Now, for those of you who don't use Twitter, deleting messages only deletes them as they show on your side, but they'll still show up on the other person's side. So I'm gonna put them on screen so that you can see full transparency here. All we had to do is put Johnny's version of the DMs side by side with Josh's version and go down the line and see if something was missing. Messages were only missing on Johnny's side. Now, keep in mind, when you look at these, the blue and gray messages are reversed for each of the other phones. So the first message missing was on December 27th, 2012, where Johnny said, quote, "Josh, how did you get through your high school years? I feel like I'm falling apart. There is just too much stress and I'm so depressed." And that tracks with Johnny saying that he was on the verge of dropping out of high school, and Joshua telling me that he spoke to Johnny because he thought Johnny was sad and he wanted to be an internet big brother figure.
I eventually switched schools a few times, but it led to things getting worse and worse and worse, to the point where I really didn't have much other choice than to drop out my sophomore year of high school.
But by Johnny leaving out that message, as well as the one that followed, it makes it look like Joshua was the first one to reach out here when it was actually Johnny. Changes the narrative. So why? Then as we scroll down on Joshua's messages, we get them to line up with the November 30th, 2013 text from Josh. Now this DM is a response to Johnny asking Josh publicly if he was going to be working at the next Chicago Auto Show, and Josh was explaining that he was not. The next several DMs from January 2014 were not altered. Johnny says that he was going to surprise Josh at a show in Minnesota, but didn't have the address. Josh sent it and commented, "You're going? Woo!" Now, it's important to note that Johnny lived in Illinois and wanted to drive 9 hours to surprise a man that he seemingly hardly knew on Twitter. Now, there are even more missing messages spanning over a year, starting in 2014, where Johnny tried asking Joshua for some YouTube advice, which went unanswered by Joshua. A message from Johnny asking if Josh wanted to hang out after their show. Joshua does not answer. Now, it was a Miranda Sings show at the Rialto Square Theater in Joliet, Illinois. And then Johnny DM'd a series of the following. December 9th, 2014. "Hey, can I tell you something?" No response from Joshua. This message is missing from Johnny's screenshots. A month later, in January 2015, quote, "I need to talk to you." Again, no response from Joshua, but missing in Johnny's screenshots. Now, the next one is in Johnny's screenshots, dated March 16th, 2015. "Hey, I need to talk to you ASAP." And again, Joshua did not respond. I have tried to rationalize every excuse to explain this, but it appears to me that Johnny Silvestri deleted messages in an attempt to manipulate the narrative and lie to me in the process. Why? And how did we end up in a position where Joshua David Evans, of all people, was able to pull an Adam McIntyre, painstakingly scrolling through all of his DMs and giving me more transparency than it looks like Johnny has, a person who has accused this man of grooming to national news outlets, massive podcasts, and web shows?
Two things. Number one, I just don't get it, because for better or for worse, I've almost put too much information out there, and I'm not trying to make this about me, I'm trying to add context here. When I've made my videos, I have literally scrolled through DMs. Like, I've opened that on my thing and I've scrolled through, and I'm like reading out when like I didn't respond to Colleen or Colleen didn't respond to me, or like really boring texts that add no context, because I was like, I am gonna force you all to sit here and read it all. Like, and you can sift through what you want rather than having to like beg for information. I mean, you're getting sent literally like edited screenshots, or, you know, with like messages deleted and stuff like that. And then Josh is sending them and it's showing that it was probably the way YouTubers responded to fans. I'm not excusing that in any way. I'm talking about a lot of like messages and then a response, or messages and a response. The fact that I have been getting so much criticism for not platforming Johnny's Joshua things, and I have been begging for information from Johnny, and to know that that's what it is so crazy to me. It's so crazy to me.
I really do not like being lied to, especially when I'm trying to share compassion, my team, and my platform with you to amplify your story, especially when it comes from a place where I expected the accused, Joshua, to try to trick me. But you, Johnny, you betrayed my trust at the highest level here, and betrayed my team, who have devoted countless hours, sleepless nights, and sacrificed their own mental health to try to help you. Why? Now, another red flag that faced my team was Johnny telling me directly that he didn't have any of his old text messages with Joshua, after having already sent me a screenshot of a text that literally showed he had at least some of his messages with Joshua. Do you still have, I'm just curious, do you still have your text conversations with Josh? And he gave me an answer that was dodgy. He always seems to be dodgy with details about Josh.
That I can check, because my old MacBook Pro revived revived itself. If I move it a little bit, it shuts off completely, and I have to move quick and in small segments. So I really wanted to get the Colleen information, the meat and potatoes.
For someone who has stated that Josh was worse than Colleen, referring to texts from Colleen as the meat and potatoes is odd. And after performing an exhaustive analysis of key evidence, not only do we believe Johnny has likely deleted DMs, but we believe he is actively withholding text message exchanges with Joshua Evans in an attempt to further falsify a narrative, which I will discuss later on. Johnny's always been an interesting person in this story because he's been an adult for the majority of it. The root of his allegations, however, began during his time as part of the Colleen Ballinger fandom when he was a teen.
I saw these usernames that were like, I love Colleen B, fighting random people under her tweets. It introduced me, if you will, to the fandom world, which I was like, people create and dedicate accounts to other human beings, and I can kind of hide and be a little bit anonymous where no one has to know who I am except for my friends I create online. Sign me up. I was a super fan.
Now, Johnny Silvestri was born May 24th, 1996, which makes him 27 years old as of me recording this. Most of Johnny's one-on-one time with Colleen Ballinger happened when he was an adult. The story about Colleen saying she was going to write a script about a fan faking an illness just to meet her, Johnny alleges he overheard that while he was on tour with Colleen as an adult and claims that it was about Ella. The screenshots of Trisha Paytas' nudes being sent over text, Johnny shared those, and he was an adult at the time, unlike Adam, who allegedly also received photos when he was an innocent minor, making what Colleen allegedly did to Adam a criminal act. Now, unlike every other person I've talked to, Johnny Silvestri has been a central part of each phase of this story. He was an early teen fan of Colleen's. He was regularly in chat rooms with Colleen. As an adult, Johnny was Colleen's employee and part of the live show crew, which means that he was also part of and in close proximity to the rotten core at the center of this story. He was so ingrained in the culture that he was even listed in the special thanks on that Miranda Sings Netflix special. Johnny himself even partook in some of the bullying of underage fans, including Adam, something Johnny actually admitted to me.
I remember it was around 2013 starting to see this Adam kid pop up. So he was getting this access to Colleen Ballinger and all of us online by going under his parents' nose. We, as a 15, 16-year-old, I didn't want to be talking to a 9 or 10-year-old, so we just kind of picked on him for being so young. And I say bully because hand on my heart, I was involved in mean stuff.
But that admission was short-lived because about 2 or so minutes later, he then flipped and said that he didn't partake in bullying Adam.
But when it comes to Adam, personally, I don't really think I partook. Even when me and him spoke on the phone for the first time last month, he even said he really didn't feel like I was invested in the bullying.
So I asked Adam about it.
My thing about that is so complex and it's so bizarre. And there's so much of that doesn't get told, and I haven't until now. So the actual truth of that is Johnny has said many, many, many times in interviews, journalist things, that him and his friends would do these tiny chat calls and they would quote unquote bully me by not letting me join the chat room with Colleen and stuff.
If he wanted to be a part of the tiny chats, we never gave him the information for it. We'd be like, ew, a kid. And then we'd kick him out and be like, no.
That's bullshit. That didn't happen. If we link up the dates, I wasn't a part of the fandom at that stage. He has said time and time again, he was a generation before me in the fandom. So I don't know why people aren't piecing 2 and 2 together. It was completely different eras. And my thing with Johnny was completely separate to Tiny Chat. Him and his friend group were the OG Colleen fans, right? And they would have these calls with Colleen. I never, ever, ever, from my recollection, of course I'm talking about myself as a 10-year-old, was never a part of those. And Johnny has spoken about this multiple times, being we would let him join the video chats, and we would kind of bully him by ostracizing him. And he would say that Colleen would bully him by saying he was weird and not letting him into the video calls and stuff. And I'm these dates don't line up. And Johnny has said this so many times where he's we would bully Adam. and I take full accountability for that.
And I say bully because hand on my heart, I was involved in mean stuff. I mean, I won't say I'm perfect, I'm not.
It's like he's taking accountability for things that he's making up, especially whenever my opinion of Johnny in the fandom was always that Johnny was the mean girl. Johnny was the one who wanted everyone to think that he was Colleen's best friend and stuff. And he was rude about me behind the scenes on Twitter, like where I would hear that he was saying like shady remarks about me trying to be the next Johnny was something that I vividly remember. And like a couple of members of the Weenies and I have like spoken about this where he would say that and he'd be like, oh, I'm trying so desperately and stuff.
Even when me and him spoke on the phone for the first time last month, he even said he really didn't feel like I was invested in the bullying.
My thing with Johnny, like if we're speaking about the bullying thing, was only that Johnny himself was rude about me and felt intimidated by me, literally a child. Within that era, like it would have literally been like end of 2015, 16, 17, and 18 when he was doing Bust Her.
That would have been an adult man saying those things about a literal child.
I particularly believe that Johnny is making up stories about him bullying me, fabricating them, and then saying, I take accountability for doing these things. And then I'm like, okay, I don't remember that. The dates don't link up. Is this motherfucker making this story up? And he told me this privately on FaceTime as well. He said that during that era, Colleen used to bully me to them, which was the thing that hit me hardest on the FaceTime call to him. Those dates would have been, before I met her for the first time, I would literally have been like 9 years old. Colleen had no idea who I was, and the dates don't link up, and he's saying that she was bullying me in their group chats. We believe that what he was trying to do was trying to push me down more, being like, okay, you thought Colleen was making fun of you? Well, actually, before you even became a fan, she was bullying you to us, and I was doing it as well. But I take accountability, but she doesn't. And it kind of felt like he was giving me more information about Colleen on this FaceTime call to hype me up, because it was right before I was about to make one of my, my relationship with Colleen Ballinger videos. The reason he wanted me to make that video so much was because he told me that he was going to create one right after it about Josh, which, by the way, does not take anything away from my video. I believe that what he was doing was telling me things that were not true, involving him and Colleen in it, saying that he takes accountability, but he was like, but Colleen hasn't, so I can't be angry at him, but I can be angry at Colleen.
Again, this is all very interesting to me because in the interview with me, he didn't say Colleen was bullying you at that time. He said that she was actually swooping in to be like, no, Adam's great, he's so cute.
That's not true.
And he said that she was bringing you in and bringing you access, and so that's very directly opposite of what you're saying actually happened.
We'd be like, ew, a kid. And then we'd kick him out and be like, no. And then she'd swoop into his DMs and be like, hey, Adam, hey, bestie. Which is, it's so bad. Because, maybe we could have protected Adam a little bit if we did befriend him.
That's not true. That is not true. He told me a couple weeks ago on FaceTime that was when she started bullying me in it. And they had to tell her, I swear to living Jesus Christ, oh my God, this is so annoying. On this call, he told me that it was Colleen making fun of me in this group chat, and it was Johnny and this other friend that were the ones that defended me and said that I was just a young kid, which was the reason then he told me that Colleen felt comfortable enough to continue talking to me, because it was Johnny that made Colleen think that I was still a good one, and it was Colleen that didn't like me and find me annoying from the get-go. This is so...
Wow. And he had 6 hours to tell me the truth, and he told me very different things. I can't underscore enough how important it is that we all understand that this 27-year-old man appears to have targeted a 20-year-old Adam and manipulated him in a one-on-one isolated FaceTime video call for the purposes of inciting Adam to make more content about Colleen so that Johnny could ride his coattails and make content about Joshua. And we believe he chose Joshua as the subject because that's the one thing that is not part of Adam's story, and no one could fact check him on it until now. Back in 2020, when Adam was just 17 years old and first came forward with his heartbreaking story and faced ruthless bullying as a result, Johnny, an adult, was very publicly supportive of Colleen Ballinger, Adam's abuser, and continued supporting Colleen during the time she was creating racist content and exploiting kids, even after his employment ended. You had mentioned something about that you had gone to one of Colleen's shows a couple of months ago. And I believe you said something along the lines of to salvage the relationship. And I wonder if you could kind of explain to me, walk me through what was happening with you, that you went to this show.
So I wouldn't say I went to salvage anything.
Like I said, still up until recently, I had just gone to a Miranda show 2 months ago. I was still attempting to salvage any relationship that was left.
So I wouldn't say I went to salvage anything. I didn't expect it to go great. That experience was just stupid. It was horrible.
He basically knew what a toxic environment it was, but for whatever reason still supported Colleen and traveled to a show as recently as this year. Hell, I mean, he even kept the backstage pass.
Well, I just found my backstage pass on the 21st of January.
Now, when my team and I were going back through the 6-hour interview, the first thing we noticed is that John has a tendency to change his story in troubling ways, sometimes at the drop of a dime and sometimes within minutes. And we're not the only ones who noticed this. When you mentioned that you had asked him for information or context or details about something, was that specifically just about his claims, his allegations against Joshua, or were there other instances that you were trying to get receipts or information that he just was not forthcoming with?
Like, it was very general on FaceTime. It was that call, and it all literally stemmed from me trying to offer sympathy, because I was like, shit, I've been, doing this for 3 years. Like, let me tell you, I'm the veteran of this. Like, if you want any, it honestly started like that. It wasn't even an interrogation or wanting proof. It was like, what has happened to you that you want like an opinion on, with messaging. Anytime I would say that, it would always be, oh, well, I have screenshots and like they're gonna do really well on Twitter. And that would kind of be the extent of our conversations to do with Colleen or Josh. Anytime I would try to find things out, the conversation would shift to like what Twitter would respond well to, rather than like what you actually want to talk about.
Now, to show you what I mean, here's a clip from him from my Twitter interview talking about Trent Ballinger.
Trent Ballinger. The reason I've personally known that Trent Ballinger has been an issue for so long is because I was groomed by him. And honestly, it took Oliver's story to kind of wake me up from that situation as well.
This was further backed up by a tweet Johnny made on June 17th when he explicitly calls himself a victim of Trent's. Now, here's him discussing Trent Ballinger on July 9th within the 6-hour train ride we went on.
With Trent, I feel like our conversations were inappropriate in the sense that he was talking to an underage child, but I don't personally feel like Trent really crossed any boundaries with me.
And followed that by saying this.
With Trent, I had a weird dynamic with Corey. I didn't like him. I'm not sure if he liked me, but I wouldn't consider myself as a groomed victim by either of those people.
So in one interview, he accuses Trent of being his groomer. In another, he says Trent did not groom him. Both of these statements cannot be true at the same time. And we thought, well, maybe, his opinion is evolving. But the trouble with that is that Johnny accused a man of grooming him on the record. And later, when he said he didn't groom him, he didn't retract his previous allegations. So it starts to feel like he's just throwing the word grooming around, which does a huge disservice to victims of grooming. And if my team hadn't clocked this inconsistency and aired his Twitter interview, people would hear Johnny openly accusing Trent of grooming him when he didn't.
Trent Ballinger. I was groomed by him.
I wouldn't consider myself as a groomed victim by either of those people.
And it honestly makes a series of tweets that Johnny made referring to Trent being the only Ballinger to text him after the accusations went public look a whole lot stranger, since Johnny literally tells Trent, quote, "The good memories will always remain the same," followed by a heart emoji.
But Johnny had told me that he was good friends with Trent only until a few weeks ago. He told me he really liked Trent. He was telling me behind the scenes that he really liked Trent. And this was whenever he was publicly supporting Oliver as well.
But the biggest examples of Johnny's story drastically changing happens in how Johnny characterizes his relationship with Joshua to me. The most basic way that I can explain adult Johnny Silvestri's story is that when he was 16, his family took a vacation to New York City to see a Miranda Sings show because Johnny was a super fan, and he approached Colleen to autograph a paper crown that he had received for participating in the show.
It was just a little family vacation we decided to go on. and kind of revolve around this trip because I had been speaking to all of my friends and Colleen and Joshua and the whole family for about a year virtually. And she never did shows in Illinois. So it was either you go to New York for one or you go to LA.
The reason Josh is so crucial, Joshua David Evans, her ex-husband, is so crucial to my story is because I was not one of the close ones to Colleen at first.
Now, according to Johnny, Joshua swooped in and signed it unsolicited, then secretly wrote his phone number and said something like, use this if you need it. And Johnny was confused. Here's how he told the story on the Do We Know Them podcast.
New York, I'm 16, get this phone number and this crown that I'm given, right? He writes his signature on it after I had won it from being a part of the show, and then he opens it up and writes something in the inside and hands it to me and says, here, use this anytime. Kind of just gives me like a nod of affirmation, and I'm like, what the fuck? And I open it.
And he's
like,
familiar with who you are because you and Colleen had...
Tiny Chat, Twitter.
Oh yes, of course, from Tiny Chat.
Yeah. I texted him that night and I just said, hey, like, thank you so much for giving me this phone number, and I let him essentially know that I will be respectful of it and only use it if I need. And he sent me something back like, don't worry about it, you're like a little bro to me. If you have any questions about the industry or you ever like want to work on some projects, hit me up.
And here's how he told that same story to me the first time during our voice notes interview.
And Josh really swooped in and scooped me up. He wrote his phone number on a little paper crown that I had gotten as a prize to be on stage at the show that night. And after he signed it, he opened it up unprovoked and he wrote his phone number.
And here's how he told that story to me in our Zoom interview. When he had given you his phone number, what was that like?
At the time, it was very surreal. I remember him handing me back the crown. I feel like I remember him saying something like, use this whenever you feel like you need to, or something like that. And my attention that night on diverted over to Josh. I was more of a Josh fan than a Colleen Miranda fan. I was still heavily involved in the fandom, but Josh gave me so much attention that Colleen didn't really give me. So I felt like, hey, if I could at least be closer to him since I'm not super close to her.
Do you remember what the conversation was that you were having with him right before he put his number in a crown?
They were just signing the crown. We were all about to leave. That's around the moment. I'm pretty sure Colleen said something about queefing. And my dad was like, what did she just say? And I was like, oh my God, I have Joshua's phone number. Really hope my dad didn't just hear Colleen say queef.
Okay, and so, I guess I didn't realize that that your parents were, or at least your dad was there with you at the time that he was writing his phone number in the crown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, let's just stop right here and address the elephant in the room. Something that Johnny has conveniently buried the lead on in every retelling of this story imaginable. Johnny Silvestri's parents were right next to him when he got this phone number from Joshua. Yeah, I'm more clear. I guess I don't know how I missed it, that your family was there. Did your parents, did they know that he had given you his number?
He gave me the crown, gave me that little nod of affirmation. My first initial response was, I don't want the other people to see that I just got this phone number, because then everybody's gonna flock and try to get it from me or like steal this crown. And
now I noticed that I had to ask Johnny multiple times about his parents being there and witnessing this because he would continuously steer the conversation away from that. So I asked once more, when did your parents learn that you had got his phone number?
I like held it close and I like double checked to like make sure, and I think I even like showed my parents and stuff, and I think in their minds they were just like, holy shit, like our kid's doing the damn thing. Okay, so maybe school didn't work out for him, but like maybe he's meant for something. Maybe he's gonna do something. Maybe Josh can be a mentor.
His parents were proud of him for receiving this phone number. Why?
Our kid's doing the damn thing, okay?
So Johnny was an inspiring YouTuber. Joshua David Evans was a bigger YouTuber. His wife was a massive YouTuber and someone Johnny idolized so much that he literally dressed up as her for Halloween. But it was this networking, endorsed by Johnny's parents, that according to Johnny, led to a friendship where Joshua allegedly promised Johnny great success in the YouTube world, which Johnny has characterized to me multiple times, again, as his meal ticket to stardom.
This was my ticket to success, my ticket to happiness. No one could take it away from me.
Now, was it appropriate for Joshua to give his phone number to a teen? No. But there's a lot of context here that changes Johnny's story. Johnny has gone on the record many times talking about how his parents were supportive of his YouTube ambitions and would fly him out to shows across the country to see Colleen and Joshua, and often attend with him. In Johnny's own words, his parents have been supportive of all of this, including him receiving Joshua David Evans' phone number. And given what we know now about Joshua receiving messages of Johnny being a sad, lost kid, Johnny's YouTube ambitions, and Johnny's parents being supportive of him receiving mentorship, this story looks a whole lot different to me now. So I addressed all of this with Adam, asking Adam if he knew about this context to Johnny's story, and he started off by sharing a very interesting story about Johnny's parents.
I'm going to keep this very limited because I'm going to be speaking on his parents, but it's to add context to what was said. He very quickly and flippantly made a comment to me where his dad was going to be going on the record to a journalist. And I was like, really? You only, came out with your story this week. And he was like, yeah, would your mom not be jumping on this? It's hot. Are your parents not going to jump on this? And I was like, oh no, this actually has been a very big issue for me and my parents. And he was like, oh no, they're talking to Huffington Post next week or whatever journalist it was. And it's never once have I ever thought about my mom getting harassed or doxxed on Twitter with being this is hot topic, mom, jump on this. Also, that timeline doesn't add up with what Johnny's saying, and I don't know why anyone hasn't pieced this together. Maybe you have. Johnny has referred to Josh. Josh has been avidly trauma dumping on me, and Colleen has been avidly trauma dumping on Adam, and they're sitting on a sofa. No wonder their marriage doesn't work, because they're sitting on a sofa trauma dumping to kids. They're not talking to each other.
It's really scary to hear the stories about Joshua and I and our dynamic, because it's very, very parallel to Colleen and Adam. Think of these two adults married in their homes. Josh has got me on a chain on one end, and Colleen's turned away and got Adam on a chain on the other end.
That does not make sense, because Colleen only started opening up to me after the divorce, September 30th, my birthday. The marriage was already over by the time Colleen was opening up to me, but Johnny was saying that both of us were getting trauma dumped on before the marriage was over, and that was never something I said. And one thing I just want to say here is I will not allow him to add or lie to my Colleen story, because a lot of people like to accuse me of lying with the Colleen story. His dates that he's saying are lying. If Johnny has said something about my story, please probably think that it's fake.
This was the exact moment in the conversation that it truly dawned on me that Adam's been sitting on these feelings even longer than I've been. And no matter what me or any of my team have gone through to make this story make sense, I cannot for the life of me imagine just how hard it's been for Adam to sit there in an impossible position, knowing that someone is out there tying himself so much to his story with so many verifiable lies, to the point that Johnny told me that not believing him means not believing Adam, which in my opinion is the most sinister gaslighting of a victim I've seen in a very long time.
I don't care if you tell your story, just don't discredit mine. Even if they leave the article still believing me, they might think to themselves, well, if Johnny is embellishing this stuff about Josh, what else could he potentially be embellishing? What might Adam be embellishing?
Johnny is the only person who is using other victims' stories as a shield. Johnny's description of the following 3 years, from the ages of 16 to 19, describe many alleged video chats with Colleen Ballinger and sometimes Joshua David Evans, though according to Johnny, almost never without Colleen.
The interactions I had with him before were very minimal. I talked to Colleen more than anything, but Josh gave me so much attention that Colleen didn't really give me. The interactions I had with him before were very minimal. I talked to Colleen more than anything. Josh, he would pop on from time to time, and he would come on with Colleen usually, which was always a treat for us.
On June 7th, for the first time publicly, Johnny tweeted that Colleen Ballinger's ex-husband, Joshua David Evans, had groomed him, saying, quote, "I was groomed by Joshua as a teen, and then they literally ended up doing almost the exact same shit he did to me." Johnny Johnny has claimed he didn't realize he was groomed until he heard Adam's story on Twitter for the second time in 2023 after a falling out with Colleen. Please just keep that in mind for any time you hear Johnny define what grooming is to him.
It was the phone call with Adam a month ago, I feel, where he was just talking about his circumstances and everything. And I've been hearing the word groomed more and more, and I didn't fully understand it. And then hearing his perspective and how there were so many parallels in our stories, I was like, oh my God. Here I hopped on because I felt, this resentment towards Josh. I saw Adam. That's when I was like, holy shit, Johnny, you were groomed.
Now, the very next day after Johnny tweeted all of this, June 8th, Joshua saw these tweets and immediately apologized to Johnny privately in a Twitter DM. This is notable because this makes Joshua David Evans the only member or former member of Colleen Ballinger's camp to apologize, and he did it immediately. Now, I'm not going to read the entire exchange, but within the apology, Joshua says it was unacceptable for him to give Johnny access to the Sarah Ridiculous Twitter account and for ghosting Johnny for what Joshua says is Johnny being excessive. Quote, I was in the wrong. You felt abandoned or disregarded. That's the honest truth. Your heart mattered then, and instead of handling it head on, I thought you'd move on to something else. That was incredibly wrong on my part. You were young and deserved transparency and protection. I straddled the fence on being like an internet big brother to you and also feeling like it was becoming unhealthy for your well-being and development. You deserve a happy and healthy future, Johnny. I played a role in messing some of that up. My hope is that this apology helps you see you were never in the wrong. You wanted a friend, that's it. I gave you the illusion that I could be that friend, which at the time I thought I could be, until I began to realize the amount of attachment you were feeling. Wishing you nothing but the best, man. I hope you and your entire family are thriving and enjoying life. You each deserve it. The most interesting thing about this apology is that it's not actually an apology for grooming or abusing Johnny in any way. It is an apology for not being a better friend and mentor, but after 7 years of not speaking at all, Johnny responded by ripping into Joshua and turning the apology into content.
I appreciate some of the self-awareness in your apology, but let me make this very clear. You did not know boundaries. I was a teenager, and yes, I was extremely naive, but you're the one who sold me a fantasy you couldn't uphold. I still have the crown you wrote it on. You looked me and my loved ones dead in the eyes at saying things like I was a brother to you, that if I ever made it big, we'd work together and you'd take me with you, etc. Subtly insinuating that I was some obsessive weirdo fan who didn't know boundaries is fucked.
To which Joshua responded again by saying,
Yep, you're absolutely right. I thought I'd done a lot of work on myself since getting sober. This is a new revelation that has shown me I didn't have a true grasp on how my emotions hurt people. Your anger is justified. Everything is justified. I don't want to backtrack. Let me try again. Gaining fame didn't, quote unquote fame, didn't prepare me for the dynamic between content creator and viewer. I thought engaging with fans was the right thing to do. I was intoxicated with my own story and pain. Okay, dude, yeah, I get you were in you were going through a divorce, but f off.
Over the course of the following week, Johnny began to ramp up in intensity the level of tweeting he was doing, posting screenshot after allegation against Colleen Ballinger, with June 14th being the time that he shared Ella's story without permission. But the following day, on June 15th, Johnny began shifting his focus back onto Josh. And this led to Johnny tweeting and often tagging Joshua nearly 20 times in less than 5 hours. So Joshua wrote again in a letter you may have already seen, quote, Johnny, I truly understand your anger. This is getting vindictive. I lost everything, and it's taken me years and years to slowly build my life back up from nothing into something worth living for. I never once had intentional malicious intent back then or now. My apology was sincere, not perfect, but sincere. The internet isn't my life anymore. It's not my job. I have a quiet little life, and I have been working so hard on myself to be okay after the trauma I personally went through. Death threats, targeted bullying for years. They even went after my little sister. I lost a career and my self-worth. I was suicidal and dragged through the mud for so long. That doesn't negate your life and how you feel, and I'm not saying this to erase your experience. I just don't understand why you choose to go this route towards me specifically. My divorce, my parents' sudden divorce, and alcoholism took over my life. I didn't want to live anymore. I should have reached out to you earlier. I was experiencing my own trauma and barely made it out alive. Okay, let's just play devil's advocate for a second and say that Joshua is right and that what Johnny Johnny is doing is vindictive. Given the intensity Johnny has been tweeting at and about Joshua, but the lack of evidence or clear allegations from Johnny, it could probably be argued that he's doing it with something that's called actual malice. Now, for all my legal brains like Emily D. Baker out there, you probably know what I am saying. If what Johnny's doing is vindictive, then, well, maybe you could argue that Johnny was literally defaming a man who apologized to him 3 times for something he never actually admitted to doing. Just a thought. In any case, this proceeded to set off another firestorm of tweets from Johnny, to which Joshua decided to finally come out and make a 4th statement, this time publicly. Quote, "Johnny, I'm doing this publicly to remain transparent. I owe you an apology. You were young when I thought I could mentor you in a positive way. I should have never given you my number. That was inappropriate. My hope is that I can help remove some of the burden by acknowledging your experience and taking accountability. I'm sorry, Johnny, not for wanting to be your friend and internet big brother, but for failing at it and walking away in the way that I did. I hope in time you feel vindicated and at peace. Regardless of how you feel towards me, I only wish the best for your future, Josh." Once again, Johnny didn't accept this and actually got into a one-sided argument with Joshua over Twitter responses, where Joshua kept claiming to reassure Johnny of the validity of his pain, while Johnny ripped into Joshua publicly. This argument ended with Johnny saying, and I want you all to remember this for later, quote, "I don't care. You befriended a 15-year-old when you were my age now, you f***ing weirdo." And shortly afterwards, Johnny blocked Joshua on Twitter. Now, before I continue on with this timeline, I want to talk a little bit about the video Johnny made that kicked all of this off. To start, I asked Adam about this video. The other thing that I wanted to ask you that you mentioned that he had talked to you about making the Joshua video, was that something he had been planning to do?
Well, he was planning on making the park one where he was talking about the tour after I made my first video.
It was at this point that Adam revealed something really effing shocking to me.
And he was talking to me about how emotional this was going to be for him to make. And I was like, well, of course I'm going to support you. I specifically remember telling him, like, I'll watch it on my Twitch and I'll re-upload it to YouTube and I'll redirect everyone your way. Like everyone needs to hear you. Like, yours is equally as important as mine. And I remember his response to that was, or even more important, was exactly the words he said, and it will always stand out to me. I ended up doing that with that video, but he mentioned that he always wanted to speak about Josh. And the reason I didn't say anything was because me and Josh had talked privately before and we talked about things and it wasn't my situation, so I didn't really say anything. But his overall aim was to make this, to build an audience and then make the Josh video. And he had made that very clear.
There are no words to describe how truly horrified I was in that moment, hearing that while Adam was trying to be a support system for Johnny, that Johnny turned around and said that his story was more important than Adam's. This is beyond disgusting and just plain cruel.
Everyone needs to hear you. Like, yours is equally as important as mine. And I remember his response to that was, or even more important, was exactly the words he said, and it will always stand out to me.
For me, what I have to remember is Adam is 20. I'm 27. He's a young guy. I feel like everybody thinks that me and him are instantly besties now because we trauma bonded. I have spoke to Adam once. I can't help but wonder if Josh is getting in people's ears and making people almost question me in ways.
He's lying to you. When I made my video, at the start of that video, I issue an apology to Josh for Colleen riling me up to make this man's life hell. Johnny watched that video and made reference to it on FaceTime and said, I thought your apologies at the start were okay, but I don't agree with some of them. And by the way, all those times that I would interact with Josh, subtweet from Johnny right after it. He is lying to you. And the only reason he did that to your face was because I was not there on that call. He really frustrates me thinking about what he has said to all these different people, because he really is changing his story and opinions of people depending on who he's talking to. And I think that that is one of the worst traits about someone, specifically when you're speaking about being a victim in something. Like, how the fuck can your story change that much?
So with all of that context in mind, let's look at what Johnny proceeded to do. Over the course of the following month and a half, Johnny made YouTube videos, posted on TikTok, held Instagram lives, and every day he tweeted many, sometimes even dozens of times about Joshua David Evans. He vented on the H3 podcast, in my opinion, manipulating Olivia, Ethan, and Ela, who have done tireless work to try to cover this story and support the victims. He told his story to me as well, and he reached out to Lily and Jesse of the Do We Know Them podcast, asking if they would like to interview him. Look, Mom, I'm on a podcast. Now, during this time, Johnny was suspended for 24 hours on his new account. He was banned from his previous Instagram account and has now been banned twice on TikTok Live, all for violating their terms of bullying and harassment. Along the way, he claimed he was being silenced.
Live access has gotten revoked again, banned from TikTok Lives. You know what, this one's for you, Colleen, Josh, Corey, the legal team, any fans, friends, cronies, groupies out there getting my stuff banned, blocked, taken down. You're gonna have to work overtime because I'm not shutting up any soon, and the more you guys try to silence me when I'm speaking my truth, the more it's making me want to speak out, and I am so beyond at peace with that.
This cycle of Johnny tweeting about Joshua went on for nearly 2 months, every single day almost, and became more vicious, more pointed, and more combative no matter what anybody said to him in the comments. This all coming from an adult man who said he wanted to leave Josh alone.
I've wanted to leave Josh alone.
Who then proceeded to tweet accusations at Joshua another 44 times that are still live on Twitter, and this doesn't even include the tweets about Joshua that he deleted. In fact, Johnny didn't let up on tweeting until July 20th, the day that I called Johnny personally to fact check something else concerning about his story, and I believe what I said on the call is the reason that Johnny stopped tweeting about Joshua David Evans for over a week. You may have noticed he got a lot quieter after that call. Before I proceed, I need to say up front that if Johnny is going to paint every adult interacting with a child as an example of grooming, every possible mentorship as an example of grooming, and any correspondence any adult may have with a child, period, as grooming, then it is completely diminishing the very power of the word grooming and turning it into something so completely benign that it has no meaning whatsoever. Like I said, it's not drama, it's dangerous. I've had very real people in my life and in my DMs admitting to me, as victims themselves, that Johnny painting grooming with such a broad brushstroke is triggering, and I agree. I have been triggered throughout this. It is my opinion that Johnny Silvestri has been making a mockery of something very, very real.
People love to misconstrue. I'm sure if they're gonna be like, oh no, Johnny was in DMs with minors. I was.
And per Johnny's own admission, he didn't even know what grooming was until he heard Adam's story. Or did he? Because the truth is, I can't say for sure if Johnny was telling the truth about that, because based on everything I'm about to tell you, I think Johnny knows damn well what real grooming looks like, because he was literally surrounded by it for the last decade, just not in the ways he told the public. Now, let me explain. On July 20th, 2023, I called Johnny Silvestri for 2 reasons. Number 1, I wanted to know if we could see his Twitter DMs with Joshua David Evans, and we all know how that turned out. But the second reason I called is the main reason this entire doc is now about Johnny. I was calling to ask him about his participation in group chats with minors, something he actually admitted to me in our interview. But since then, a number of troubling developments have occurred. Namely, we received confirmation that Johnny Silvestri has been in group chats with minors for the entirety of his 20s and started a new group chat at the end of July, just a few weeks ago, with somebody he's been in group chats with since he was 21, and that participant was only 13. But it gets even more depraved because we received an allegation that Johnny was also in a series of disturbing group chats with minors involving the consumption of alcohol, SUL discussion, and in our opinion, legitimate grooming.
People love to misconstrue. I'm sure if they're gonna be like, oh no, Johnny was in DMs with minors. I was. I'll be the first person to say it. I was in the group that originally was a Colleen group chat that I had been added in. My friend, who I am not friends with anymore, overtook that and created the group where he decided to start grooming teenage girls on the internet. You know, there were also chat rooms or DMs that I was added to during tour. And it was tricky because I didn't want to be in DMs with a bunch of teenage girls. Like, I was, you know, confident in my sexuality. If anything, I want men to be in my DMs.
Now, as a reminder, John, when he was on Colleen Ballinger's crew back in 2018, when he was a 22-year-old man, would occasionally perform in her shows. Because of this, something interesting seemed to happen that, to my knowledge, hasn't really been discussed. John Silvestri gained fans. His own fans, and pretty devoted fans, something we discovered on accident while researching during part 1 because of the countless tweets and birthday videos and stan accounts that were created for John from when he was an adult. There's also evidence that these fans sent him gifts, but something my team and I didn't know until we talked to Adam, which makes so much more sense given the unbelievable amount of pictures that are of adult Johnny Silvestri posing with children, was that Johnny was apparently holding his own unofficial meet and greets at Colleen Ballinger shows.
One thing he never ever talked about in his videos was that he created this atmosphere of like his own meet and greet at the shows. And I mean, there are photos on Twitter, I think he's even included them somewhere, of people going up to him at shows and taking photos with him. And I think these were obviously part of the group chats or whatever. This was something that he did, and it was what he and his friend Tim used to do on social media. The fans liked the fact that Johnny and Tim were close to Colleen, so they would become fans of these people and try to get close to them. Johnny and Tim really honed in on this fact, and then they would start talking to them publicly on Twitter. And I also knew that they would, at meet and greets, literally wait in line to meet Johnny, you know, or take selfies with Johnny or signatures with Johnny or something. And I mean, Johnny and especially his friend Tim, they absolutely loved it. I did not know that there were group chats, and I did not know that the individuals you just listed were a part of that, and that whenever I first heard that, completely has opened this to a whole new level, which is equally and more so disturbing.
There was also evidence we clocked early on that Johnny was involved in group chats, video chats, and so on with these fans who were all between the ages of 13 and 15, with some potentially 17 when this all started, which, considering what Johnny himself has endlessly been saying publicly about adults communicating with minors, what the John? So we asked him about it directly. I am curious, like, since you appeared on stage throughout your experience on tour, we found some examples of people who became fans of yours in essence, and almost like stans in some ways. Why do you think fans were becoming fans of yours as well?
But because of Colleen. I don't know, just over time, people, they liked me. The first show, actually, I did in Austin with them, I had people come up to me and start taking pictures with me, and I was like, who am I to tell a person no? Like, this is cool.
Now, this seems like a decent take, but John continues.
The fans were honestly like a safety net at the end of the day, because when we'd wrap up a day of work, and I'd be walking to the bus, and I'd see all of these people who were excited to see me after I'm just sitting around people who I feel like can barely stand to have me in a room with them. Having people who supported me and liked me meant the world. There's 3 I can think of. One of them, actually.
Now, I won't be naming any of John's fans out of respect, because even though they're adults now, they deserve peace, and I do not feel comfortable identifying them. But I want to point out that the specific fan he's talking about here was only 13 years old when they met John, and John's saying this fan was one of his super fans. And it's what John said next, however, that caught me completely off guard.
I feel like I have been able to be a mentor to some of these people.
The fact that John is calling Joshua a predator because he was trying to mentor is effing wild. By Johnny's own definition, does this also make Johnny a predator?
You know, there were also chat rooms or DMs that I was added to during tour. And it was tricky because I didn't want to be in DMs with a bunch of teenage girls. Like, I was, you know, confident in my sexuality. If anything, I want men to be in my DMs, you know? Like, I don't want to be talking to girls.
Now, I have to interject here. Let it be known that the only person in this conversation who made sexual reference to Johnny Silvestri being in group chats was Johnny Silvestri, unprovoked. And the only person who made references and used the word boys was Johnny Silvestri.
Like, I was, you know, confident in my sexuality. If anything, I want men to be in my DMs.
Imagine if Joshua David Evans said that. Let's continue.
You know, I pop in from time to time because it was fun. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, oh, this is like a weird world to be in. Like, I have fans now. Like, who am I to not say hi? Or like, it was an ego boost. That applause, people shouting your name, screaming for you. I was like, whoa. And so I was getting added into these DMs, and if I'd pop in and just say, you know, hey, thanks for the support, everyone would freak out, and I'd be like, oh, that was fun.
On top of that, I was curious about why John would allow himself into chats that he claimed he didn't even want to be in.
Colleen and Corey warned me. They said, don't interact with the fans too much. In hindsight, I can say now, I could have justified it and been like, well, I'm an adult. I don't want to. I shouldn't be in these rooms.
Now, there's a lot here that's really interesting for me to unpack, because in the weeks following this interview, John has taken a more combative tone on social media against the adults in this situation engaging in video chats with fans. He posted this photo, which says, just an adult couple on Uvu with their kid friends, and this one, which derogatorily refers to Joshua and Colleen talking to their minor pals. He also posted this photo of Corey DeSoto, which scolds him for being a grown man telling a group of underage fans he loves them, which is something Johnny himself has done often and publicly with his underage fans while being an adult in his 20s, even as recently as last year, when we verified that some of these fans were indeed still underage. He was 26 then. On a TikTok John posted back on June 15th, somebody commented, I don't understand why it's so hard for people to understand how wrong it is to be friends with minors. To which he replied, literally. On the Do We Know Them podcast, John had this exchange.
It's already weird to be a 30-year-old, or I guess at the time, maybe late 20s. What do you have in common with like 13, 14-year-old? Like, that's
nothing. I mean, like, I want to protect them right now, but like, I don't particularly enjoy kids. And so
there's nothing that realistically that we should have in common with kids. Like, there's just nothing to talk about on a daily basis. The group chats are inappropriate on their own, but the video chatting 3 girls that are underage preteens regularly when you're almost 30 is weird. It's just beyond.
On top of that, John is allegedly still in at least one of these group chats and was in the others well after his employment with Colleen Ballinger ended. John has told me and many other outlets that Colleen had told him to never leave the group chats because
you were an adult at this point when you worked for Colleen and you were added into group chats and you should have left them. But I literally got told by Colleen and Corey, you have to be very careful about what you do online. And they would say things like, if you leave a DM, that could look bad. It can look malicious and mean. So just don't respond to
Colleen warned Johnny that he has to be careful what he does online. But more importantly, he wanted people to think that working for Colleen was the reason why he stayed in group chats. Except Johnny, a 27-year-old man, hasn't worked for Colleen for nearly 5 years now and was still active in group and video chats. As we continue, just know that by Johnny's own definition, he would find his participation in these video chats predatory and unacceptable, especially since there is evidence he made them himself.
The very first time we got on Tiny Chat with you, I remember it was such a big deal because you had made us go through all of this effort to download Tiny Chat, or not download it, but to make accounts and just get all of it set up, get the link set up, and we were so excited. Like, and I were on FaceTime as we were trying to set it up, just freaking out because we could not wait to talk to you. And then once we all finally were on, that was just the greatest day ever.
That's a clip from a birthday video to Johnny, which was made by one of Johnny's fans, stating quite explicitly that Johnny had made his then underage fans go through all this effort to get on Tiny Chat. Now, those fans, by the way, were as old as 15 and as young as 13 back in 2018 when Johnny befriended them as an adult. This is the 6th consecutive birthday video they have made for Johnny for his 27th birthday this year.
Some maybe a little bit older, which I know is a tricky topic too, because some people are like, I was 21 and in a group chat with 17-year-olds, and it's like, calm down. You're fine. The issue is the power imbalance that these adults had with us children.
Just as a reminder, Johnny, you had a power imbalance with your underage fans. That's all. That's all. Also, a reminder that Johnny blasted Joshua David Evans publicly for being a 27-year-old man befriending a 15-year-old and also for cutting contact with him after a certain point. Johnny was 21 when he befriended 13 and 15-year-olds that he is still friends with to this day.
The whole reason I'm coming out with my stories is because it's inappropriate for adults to be friends with children.
I have no reason, have no interest, have no desire. There is no part of me that wants a relationship, a friendship, anything with someone 10 years younger than me.
Now, the first time I saw this birthday video, it put me in a weird headspace, so I'm gonna speak frankly. Here I was, sitting on an infamous 6-hour interview with someone who has said in no uncertain terms that adults hanging out with minors is inappropriate, who was doing the same thing, and as I would later discover, it looks like a lot worse.
I put it in perspective for myself and I thought, Johnny, think about it right now. You're sitting at home, after work, you're decompressing, you open up your laptop and you type in tinychat.com and you go to watch 14-year-olds talk for 3 hours, and my stomach tightened and turned and I welled up and just started crying.
Now, as you'll find out, I spoke to some of the now adults in John Silvestri's group chat, who are known as the Johnny Stans group chat, and they definitively told me that Johnny was never inappropriate in their group or video chats. However, I feel the need to pause and point out a few concerns I have with this. First, when I discovered that Johnny had been in these chats, I gave him the courtesy of a private phone call to explain himself, and he told me on that call that he knew that him being in these group and video chats was, quote, wrong and inappropriate. Yeah, Johnny told me that. Johnny has also pointed out many times that he is the same age now that Joshua was when Joshua befriended teen Johnny. Johnny is still friends with the fans he met under similar circumstances. These fans, again, were 13 to 15 when John met them as a 21-year-old man. He also regularly corresponded with them publicly and privately for over half a decade.
I feel like I have been able to be a mentor to some of these people.
Now, just an hour before this was said in an interview, though, he described his relationship with Joshua this way. What do you think that Josh was grooming you for?
You would think it would be super disturbing if it was sexual, but that would just be pretty cut and dry. But never once did I ever feel like these people wanted to come on to me sexually or had any sexual intent. Any intent to exploit me in any ways? No.
And remember, the only person who brought up sexual interest when discussing group chats with minors was Johnny Silvestri, talking about himself.
Like, I was confident in my sexuality. If anything, I want boys, well, men, to be in my DMs.
And then somehow I got dragged into this story yet again. Let me back up to July 15th, 2023, when a user on the Colleen Ballinger snark subreddit by the name of Specialist Leg 6145 began posting ominously about how Johnny Silvestri was lying, but every time they tried to post the evidence, the mods there would delete their posts. And to be fair, I get why, and not for conspiratorial reasons. Johnny has been positioning himself as one of the victims at the forefront of this story, the most important, and he is not one of the Ballingers. So by the snark subreddit's rules, any posts that attempt to undercut Johnny's credibility are simply against the rules, and we love the snark subreddits here and we respect their rules. Yes, we do. So Specialist Leg 6145 announced that they had created a new subreddit known as The Truth About Johnny. And I need to shout Specialist Leg out for their tireless work in reaching a similar conclusion that we also ended up on, as well as all of the private clarification that they have given us on certain topics. Now, the Truth About Johnny subreddit, or the Johnny Reddit as I'll call it, sought to expose what they referred to as Johnny Silvestri's lies, as well as the extent of his participation in group chats with minors. The screenshots on this subreddit were overwhelming, containing what appeared to be dozens of group chat DMs, video chat screenshots, and general conversations held between a 20-something-year-old adult Johnny and fans in their early teens. Now, originally we weren't going to use any of the information from this subreddit because it was unsubstantiated, and early on we clocked that comments were being left by the participants participants of the group chat, claiming that they were being taken out of context. But that all changed when, out of the blue, 2 of the participants from the Johnny Stans group chat DM'd me to explain the actual context. And given everything I know now, I think those DMs managed to paint a worse picture than I ever expected. First, I need to explain how we even got to this point. Like I mentioned earlier, on Thursday, July 20th, I actually called Johnny Silvestri for a quick conversation to see if he had any awareness of the subreddit. Johnny told me he was indeed aware of the subreddit, but hadn't actually looked at anything that was posted on it. This is when he told me that being in chats with minors was inappropriate and wrong, but then he told me that one of his fans, someone Johnny has been in group chats with since they were 13, spoke with him, and Johnny said they freaked out, saying things like, "I ruined everything." These are Johnny's exact words, describing how somebody he's been in group chats with since they were 13 characterizes people discovering that Johnny has been in group chats with minors for over half a decade. The other thing that bothered me about the call, I asked Johnny what he was going to do. Accountability would have been a good answer. And he told me that he didn't know that he should take accountability publicly because that would draw attention to it. And so he was navigating what to do. It's been about 3 weeks and Johnny has not taken accountability for this. And any time that somebody tried to get Johnny to address this, he has allegedly blocked them.
I would be worried right now if I had something to hide. I'd be shaking in my boots like, oh God, what if they find this thing or this thing? But I don't have skeletons in my closet, so.
And then something interesting happened a few days later. I noticed on July 24th that my Twitter DMs were set to only receive messages from verified accounts. So I fixed it and tweeted out, my Twitter DMs are back open. And let me just put this out there. My Twitter handle is @SpankyV. If you want me to see information on a story, you can reach me there. I always appreciate it so much when you send me information or you tag me in posts. I do see it. Now, almost immediately after I tweeted that, I received a completely unexpected message from that very same fan Johnny mentioned on the call. It said, "Hey Swoop, can I ask you a question? It's sort of important." And I responded, of course, what's up? Johnny's fan immediately responded, "Have you heard of the allegations against Johnny?" Quote, "Basically, there's someone trying to accuse him of being inappropriate with 3 minors, me being one of them, and I saw people mentioning you have people messaging you about it and how people should cover the topic, and so if people have reached out to you about it, I just wanted you to also hear my side as well before pursuing anything, because a lot of the information on the thread is straight up incorrect and false info." Now later on, this person tells me that one of their friends, who was also mentioned in the subreddit, actually commented trying to tell their side of the story and was banned. The group chat member said, quote, "I can tell their intentions are pushing a narrative to try to take down Johnny and not actually being concerned for us, clearly, because they were censoring us." Now, for context and transparency, Johnny's fan was referring to a series of comments on the subreddit that were saying variations of, "Swoop should know about this subreddit." And again, I appreciate you all for that. And trust me, my team and I see when y'all tag me with information, okay? We see you, we appreciate you. I hope you all understand why I had to stay quiet during all of this to keep the investigation clean, not tip people off to directions that we were looking into, but please do keep it coming. Now, I told this person that we had indeed seen the thread and spoke to Johnny about it already. I figured the best way to move forward with this was to figure out their side of the story, so I asked them to share their perspective as well as any communications they had with Johnny about it. This person informed us that another person affiliated with the group chat would be reaching out soon, but also said, quote, "Me and Johnny haven't really talked about this whole thing. I did shoot him a DM like a week ago when this first was posted to warn him that someone was saying stuff on Reddit, but he said he was trying to stay off of Reddit." So to be clear, this person told me they simply reached out to Johnny about this, but Johnny told me that they freaked out and told Johnny, "I ruined everything." Yeah. Later that day, I received a DM from someone else who said that they had been in group chats with Johnny since they were a minor. Here's the context they provided me. They told me they were 15 when they met a 21-year-old Johnny. with their 13-year-old friend at a Miranda Sings show. And that Johnny was so kind that they found him on social media, DM'd him, made a fan account for him, and made a group chat with him and a couple others. This fan claims that they used the group chat all day, every day, but Johnny would pop into the chat for a few minutes but never shared anything personal or inappropriate. They say that they would DM Johnny privately, specifically saying they always messaged him first. Then they said Johnny had video chats with them maybe 4 times, which is at odds with a comment on Reddit that said maybe 2 times, and that their parents always knew when he was on the call. The DM ended with the fan saying, quote, "Johnny has been nothing but kind to me the entire time I have known him, and he never tried to manipulate me like they're making it out to seem." This was followed up by an email containing a full Google Doc from both fans that walked me through what they described as the inconsistencies on the subreddit's screenshots. Now, comparing what both fans sent me, I tend to agree that most of the context was skewed towards assumptions on that subreddit at the time. So why am I sharing all of this? I know it was a lot, because it was really hard to shake a few uneasy feelings this whole situation gave me, which directly led me to discovering a couple of harsh realities that have popped up since. First, I know for a fact Johnny has lied about his participation in these group chats only lasting as long as his employment with Colleen Ballinger. I know for a fact that the very same day that subreddit was created, the former minors Johnny was in a group chat with were already on the subreddit trying to correct the story. And after I simply asked Johnny about his subreddit on July 20th, he immediately stopped tweeting about Joshua David Evans. I think my phone call scared him, and it's really hard to look at dozens of screenshots of Johnny in group and video chats with minors knowing all of what I know now, and the passing comment about not wanting to be in chats with girls. He's confident in his sexuality. He wanted to be with boys. I mean men.
If anything, I want men to be in my DMs.
And most of all, I'm sharing this story because it directly preceded a conversation I had with someone who met Johnny when they were a minor, who has come forward now to share a story that actually made everything else I just shared seem so much more disturbing. Johnny's entire Twitter identity throughout the summer has always come back to the idea that adults should not be friends with minors under any circumstances.
The whole reason I'm coming out with my stories is because it's inappropriate for adults to be friends with children.
Yet the entire time Johnny has been publicly blasting adults for being in group chats, he has been in at least one, and that doesn't include the other group chats he's been in with minors that we are now aware of. This is a screenshot of one of these fans telling Johnny to check the Johnny Stans group chat on June 12th, over a week after Cody Tyler posted their video and 5 days after Johnny began criticizing Colleen Ballinger for being an adult in group chats. And with the Johnny Stans writing me as soon as there was even an idea that I might cover this, it sent me back to all these incidences I've found of Colleen fandom doing something like this for Colleen Ballinger, usually after being alerted to something in their group chats together. But friends, what makes me even more uncomfortable about all of this is the fact that on June 19th, Johnny Silvestri made an at the time unnoticed series of tweets accusing a 28-year-old man named Tim Connolly of grooming, something we've also seen referenced by Adam McIntyre. We've since discovered that not only was this man, Tim, Johnny Silvestri's best friend, with years of Johnny's Twitter history being almost exclusively tweeting this man, but Tim was literally participating in group and video chats with Johnny and underage fans. This is where Johnny's story takes a turn I never expected in our investigation. We've since discovered that at least one, if not all, of the Johnny Stans were in the chat, or at least one of Tim Connolly's other group chats at some point, including Johnny himself. And according to anonymous sources, when Johnny tweeted that he left this group when a 14-year-old allegedly posted something sexual, allegedly, Johnny lied, with Johnny's participation in this particular group apparently lasting well over a year in his 20s, and he may have been in others created by Tim Connolly. Now, this doc isn't about Tim Connolly, and most of the story stories anybody would want to share about him are being kept private, but to give you an idea of the type of person he allegedly is.
There was an instance where I told Johnny about a situation that happened with his friend Tim, and this was very recent, but I was speaking about a situation that had been happening for years. And I told him about how, his friend or ex-friend Tim had been very flirty with me over social media. I remember whenever my cat died, in January, Tim responded to my Instagram story and was like, thighs, about a picture I had posted of me holding my cat. And I remember telling Johnny about it a couple of weeks ago, and Johnny was like, yes, this is great. Can you send me all the screenshots so I can add this to a mega thread? So it just further proves the point that Johnny is waiting to call anyone in his close circle some sort of allegation that he can make a Twitter thread out of. Whether they're valid or whether they're not, he will be there with that thread.
With Adam's additional context in mind, it's worth noting that Johnny Silvestri was this man's best friend during almost the entire time period that Tim was allegedly being predatory. The two of them came up as Colleen fans together, and when you look at what remains of their correspondence between these two men online, you can see that many fans saw the two as inseparable. One source told me that Tim was the loud and confident one, Johnny was the quiet one. I've had people come forward to me to simply share their stories involving Johnny Silvestri and Tim Connolly's participation in these group and video chats, and many of these details I've been providing are so disturbing. I'm afraid to say that the absolute depravity in the Colleen Ballinger fandom seemingly has no bottom to it. I've now spoken with someone anonymously who was in a group chat with Tim Connolly and Johnny Silvestri, who managed to provide a disturbing context we did not previously know about these calls. To put what we're about to talk about in the most sobering terms imaginable, Specialist Legs 6145 described their knowledge of this situation to us this way, quote, "Without Maxwell, there would be no Jeffrey, and without Johnny Silvestri, there would be no Tim Connolly."
You're a f***ing weirdo, and you're a loser, and you smell bad, okay?
Let me start with a massive content warning for child endangerment, CSA, and underage drinking. Now, just because the speaker is anonymous does not mean the speaker is unverified. Also, I have confirmed many times that this person is exactly who they say they are. Trust me. I'm stating for the record that I cannot personally verify much of this information that I received shortly before filming right now, but I felt compelled to share it because our speaker has informed us that they are genuinely frightened of Tim Connolly and Johnny Silvestri about coming forward with this. This statement began by saying that Tim Connolly started talking to Colleen fans in 2018 by creating video calls on a platform called House Party, which he used to promote his own music and short films under the name My Name is Chapel. This eventually splintered off into multiple smaller group chats with bigger fans to learn more about his music or the short films he would make. Almost all of these fans were minors, almost all of them Tim called his friends. It is believed that Tim was trying to become a ringleader in his own fandom and started recruiting fans to bring more people to be his fans.
The fans were honestly like a safety net at the end of the day.
Soon, more adults began joining these calls alongside minors. Tim's roommates, who were also in their 20s, logged on or joined group chats. Talks about S and romance sometimes happened, which would be one thing if the chat were all minors, but Tim himself would give teens relationship advice and allegedly introduce them to new SUL words and situations, with our speaker providing an example of Tim mocking minors who didn't know what Connolly was. Tim would allegedly say things afterwards like, "Don't tell your parents I said or did this."
If anything, when I would respond, it would be to help give him some life advice.
And then alcohol entered the mix. According to our speaker, alcohol appeared up to multiple times a week on the calls, with Tim getting drunk to the point of passing out on video chat. Sometimes he even encouraged minors to drink as a joke, though sometimes Tim actually got the minors to drink on camera. Now, this next detail disturbed me so much, I'm just going to read it. Quote, "Some of these people were young enough to not even know what a hangover was. He would tell us what alcoholic drinks drinks were better and give us drinking tips. He would get minors to drink a little and then they would start drinking more and more, end quote. I don't have words for how disgusting this is. And I'm just gonna read this next part because it makes me so horrified for our speaker. Quote, "There was one night Tim made an inappropriate comment on my body when I was a minor and he was mid-20s that really bothered me, but I don't want to describe it in detail for anonymity. I'll let you know they disclosed the full story to me on a call and I completely understand why they responded with the following. Quote, I will say I was so uncomfortable with it, I ended up throwing the clothes I was wearing away. He would also talk to us about wanting to hook up with guys and share his plans for getting with them to us, even when we were around 14 and 15. None of this even begins to scratch the surface on how Tim would allegedly weight shame his fans, body check his fans, gift fans with an Instagram follow or his phone number, would love bomb his fans into keeping secrets, manufacture drama in his and Colleen's fandoms, and most disturbingly, Tim would allegedly meet up with his underage fans in public, sometimes alongside his friends. This, according to our source, still happens to this day. Everything I shared is literally just scratching the surface on what a monster Tim Connolly allegedly is. So where does Johnny Silvestri come into this? Well, friends, not only was Johnny Silvestri Tim's best friend of 10 years, he was allegedly a participant in these chats for at least a year, according to our source. And our source has informed us that Johnny was at least occasionally active for the calls where Tim was drunk and encouraged minors to get drunk. In regards to Johnny, quote, he would usually come on for shorter periods of time, whereas Tim would literally do his work from home job on video calls with fans. I know Johnny was sometimes on with the alcohol because a few times he had to call Tim to wake him up when he passed out drunk. Johnny having to call Tim multiple times when he was passed out drunk means he was very aware that this was happening. And most damningly of all, it was alleged that during these calls, Johnny would tell fans secrets about things he learned on the Colleen Ballinger bus tour. Quote, regardless of his NDA. If you remember back to the definition of grooming, secrets is a pretty big one. According to our source, Johnny was literally rewarding his underage fans with secrets in group chats and video calls that were filled with alcohol consumption and sexual talk. Make of that what you will. And most disturbingly of all, our speaker's statements ended with the line, quote, I'm still very afraid of Tim or Johnny retaliating in a way that will hurt me, but I hope this statement helps and it doesn't escalate more. What makes all of this even more disturbing to me is that we also found a series of tweets where Johnny openly admits to being drunk while engaging with one of his underage fans himself when the fan was 15 or 16 years old at the time. The same fan that Johnny has been talking to and in-group chats with since they were 13 years old, and they're still in private group chats with him right now. And even if the anonymous tip we received was inaccurate in any way, I need to point out that the timestamp on that photo I just showed of Johnny being informed that Tim was falling asleep drunk with minors in video calls that Johnny was also allegedly on is April 12th, 2020. So let's talk about the timeline that should really seal the deal on why this is all a huge problem for Johnny Silvestri, who was almost 24 at this time. 2 days after that message was sent to Johnny to wake up a drunk Tim Connolly, a video was posted to Twitter of a video chat between Tim Connolly, Johnny Silvestri, and multiple minors, including at least some of the Johnny stans who would have been about 17 years old at the time of this video being posted. Tim and Johnny are singing and laughing in this video.
It's my star. Oh, break my star. And sings my whole my star to me.
They're singing and laughing. Now, I can't directly say if Tim is drunk on the call. You can be the judge of that by the sound of his voice, but this video was either from the call where Johnny woke Tim up, or it took place after, meaning if this video chat took place after, Johnny knew Tim would pass out drunk on Zoom calls with minors, said nothing, and happily hopped on another call with him.
It's my star. Oh, break my star.
But let's just say that video happened before Johnny had to wake Tim up. Could you argue that maybe Tim and Johnny stopped going on calls altogether after that? No, because here we have a tweet from November 14th, 2021 from somebody thanking Tim and Johnny for their alcohol recommendations, saying, quote, "I will let you both know, wrote down Dirty Shirley, Margarita on the Rocks, Sober Tequila, Cosmo, and Vodka Cran." And here's a screenshot of that video call. Now, to be fair, this person had just turned 21 that year, but here we are, a year and a half after Johnny learned Tim would fall asleep drunk on calls with minors, calls that according to a witness, Johnny was also a part of, and here's Johnny talking about alcohol with Tim on yet another video chat. And this was still more than a month away from Johnny's final undeleted tweet at Tim on December 20th, 2021. In looking at all of this, a 25-year-old Johnny Silvestri was well aware of and participating in at least some of what his best friend has been accused of doing for over a year. He didn't say anything until it was in his best interest to blast these stories publicly. And it's not like this was anything new for Johnny's bestie either. Here are a few tweets from some of the Johnny stans talking about Tim being drunk back in 2018 when they were around 13 and 15. On top of all of that, I need to talk for a second about the Johnny stans text message screenshots between an alleged Johnny Silvestri and an alleged Tim Connolly. Now, I wasn't originally going to talk about this next thing either because one of the first things that Johnny stans verified with me is that all screenshots of text message correspondence with Johnny or Tim shown on the Truth About Johnny Reddit are allegedly the Johnny stans as kids having some fun and changing their names to Johnny and Tim and texting each other. Now, I know that sounds weird, but that's what they told me, and I, at this point, have to believe them, which is why it's extra troubling that we recently found some more of these text messages from 2018, where then 13 and 15-year-old Johnny stans are saying things like, quote, "Tim and I are so drunk, like it's bad, and I just spent on tequila shots, sober me would be pissed." Again, according to the stans, these aren't actually texts from Johnny or Tim, but tell me, why are literal children making such specific jokes about alcohol while pretending to be Johnny and Tim? It's almost like they're impersonating them, right? What do you do when you're impersonating someone? You mimic their most frequent actions, right? There's also a Snapchat screenshot here that shows someone could be Johnny or one of the Johnny stans saying, quote, "I can't talk, I talk ducked up, I'm so high and drunk, I'm sorry." And even if this isn't Johnny, then again, why are children making so many jokes about him being drunk? What were they exposed to? Now, unlike any of Johnny's allegations against Colleen Ballinger or Joshua David Evans, there is no power imbalance whatsoever here between Tim Connolly and Johnny Silvestri. Johnny literally admitted in a tweet that Tim Connolly used Colleen and Johnny to access underage fans, saying, quote, "He used the relationship with Colleen and I to get close to kids," meaning that Johnny was the one with the power and the access per his own words, something this timeline makes very clear Johnny knew. It may also be worth noting that less than 1 month after Johnny woke a drunk Tim up on a Zoom call, he was telling Colleen Ballinger that he was proud of her for admitting to sending a 14-year-old named Adam McIntyre her panties. Judging by the context of how you've tweeted about Tim, I don't imagine your friendship ended well, Johnny. I don't know what happened between you two, and I hope it was safe. But regardless, from everything we've seen, you were complicit here for a long time. By your own definition, you enabled the abuse that happened around you. You watched it until you didn't, and it appears that you're now using the harm you were complicit in for your own personal gain. And all I can do is hope that the people Tim hurt and that you knew about, I hope that they can find healing now. Johnny, one of these innocent people is terrified of you, terrified that you will hurt them even more now simply because they've tried to speak their truth. You can put an end to their fear if you do the right thing right now and take accountability. There is still time. Make no mistake, you don't need to face morph yours and Tim's faces together for us to know you are more than likely one and the same Johnny. The cold hard reality of the situation is that what we uncovered was a situation where Johnny Silvestri has been privately chatting with minors for nearly 6 years, a situation he and the now adults in the chat have very much tried to keep a secret or at least downplay the severity of. We also discovered that he acted as a silent enabler of perhaps the absolutely most disturbing open secret in the Colleen Ballinger fandom. Some of the Johnny stans were still publicly engaging with Tim until at at least May 2022. Johnny, from everything we've looked at, you knew. And you knew for years, and you didn't say a damn word about it until June 2023. In return for all of this being kept a secret, Johnny Silvestri has gotten to uphold a story that he was not an aggressor and an enabler in the Colleen Ballinger story. And after being confronted with these allegations against him, he lied to us, knowingly and in the most condescending way imaginable. And as for you, Tim Connolly, you have Johnny Silvestri to thank for all of this coming out right now. Now, on August 1st, 2023, Johnny came clean with a Colleen Ballinger-esque non-apology notepad statement hidden in a response to a quote tweet of an Elon Musk tweet. Now, fun fact, he literally tweeted this statement about being in chats with minors in real time right after I explained to Adam McIntyre what we had found. I have on video the two of us reading this statement together for the first time because it literally just happened while I was interviewing Adam. Okay, I'm sorry, I just got an update here.
Yo.
I'm just gonna read this. Johnny has just released a Notes app admission within the last hour to some of the group chats, but denying other parts of it. Sorry, my team is literally updating me as we speak on this, and my team said that it's bullshit. Now, I know this has been a really heavy watch, but I wanted y'all to see the absolute trouble, by the way, that Adam and I both had even accessing this fucking statement. Johnny hid this Notes app statement in a response to somebody, and for some reason, it pops up as like inaccessible, as if Johnny has managed to limit the audience for the tweet. I still don't even understand how he did this, how this happened.
Wait.
It's a
Why is it like...
Is this a response?
Look, wait, whenever I click on this thing, it says it's limited.
Has he blocked you?
He hasn't blocked me, he still follows me, but the tweet is restricted, which is why it has no interactions. It has like one like. It's hidden for some reason. I don't know how he did that.
After a lot of back and forth over that, Adam and I were finally able to access Johnny's statement. Quote, I had fans of my own who I would talk to from time to time, minimally, in all capitals. I even checked in with these people to make sure they were okay, and I apologized, and they assured me that I had never crossed any boundaries with them. Yes, I was 22 at the time. Would I do that now? No. Wow. Because we obviously know that he has done that. He is doing that now, as recently. Sorry, okay, I won't interject here. Let me keep reading. Would I do that now? No. My perspective has changed. I was groomed, starting from the age of 15, into believing that this was normal behavior, but it's not. I was fresh off bus tour and excited that I had fans of my own. I never once manipulated them, never gave them my personal phone number or information about my life, never promised them anything for personal gain, never chatted with them inappropriately. I'm confident in who I am, what I've done, and what I plan on doing in the future. I literally have absolutely nothing to hide. Trying to pin me as a bad guy completely diminishes my trauma and invalidates everything myself and the rest of the Colleen, Josh, Corey, and Trent's victims have been through.
Leave us out of it.
It's disgusting, and I won't have it. The only group chat I was in where Trisha's nudes were being sent to me was our work group chat, which included Colleen, Corey, and I. I have never been in a group chat where porn was sent while minors were present. That has never been okay to me and never will be okay to me. Hi there, me for a second here. My team didn't find any allegations of Johnny sending P to minors or being in group chats with capital P being sent to minors. So what did you mean by all this, Johnny? If you unclog your ears, you'd notice I've talked about this multiple times already. I wanted to believe these people loved and cared about me. Colleen always left me dangling by a thread once she was done with me. Shame on me for not waking up sooner. The January show was my closure. I went in with an open mind since I hadn't seen them or had a ton of contact since before COVID. I wanted to believe maybe some things had changed, but guess what? They were even more miserable than I remembered them to be. I got the closure I needed that day. Hearing Adam's story resurface 2 months ago broke the floodgates of trauma, manipulation, depression, sadness, everything I've worked so hard to ignore, and I knew that I couldn't sit back anymore. I knew that my story could help verify Adam's allegations towards these people. I feel ashamed that I didn't come out sooner. I attempted to, but quickly got sucked back into the bullshit by Miss Colleen herself, but it was all damage control. She wanted to make sure I didn't do back then what I'm doing today. She was scared of me, and I didn't even realize it. I've apologized to Adam for this as well, and will continue to not only fight for myself, but him and all those other victims, including those who haven't and may never come out. I hope this clarifies what you needed it to clarify. Wow.
That is what you just read is absolute BS.
I'm stunned.
Number one, you're not going to be in group chats. Well, I mean, there's a one created this week of you trying to like use especially and yet again mentions me and the other victims, like trying to grip us all in, but like we all have things behind our stories and we're willing to talk to people, whereas he's putting up this front of, well, what is it that happened to you, Johnny? Oh, well, don't make me talk about it. Of course I've already spoken about it. It's like, it's almost like weaponizing us even further. I'm actually at a loss for words.
I mean, he mentioned you by name directly to bring you into this, to make it sound like he is your, top tier advocate, is how I read that. And again, this is something happening that obviously, as we're discovering this in real time right now, he did not talk to you about ahead of time that he was going to.
He doesn't talk to me.
Yeah. But he seems to have no issue with attaching himself to you, attaching himself to other victims.
It's crazy to me. It's like on Reddit, he's being called out for like, if he ever gets called out for something, he's willing to throw anything at the board to see what it sticks, including bringing up or me. He could be, by some people's definition, if we use his one, of grooming people. Like, if we strictly use his definition, right? He could be accused of that. And his way of getting out of that is bringing up my name like 2 or 3 times or whatever whenever he's not speaking to me behind the scenes. He's avidly subtweeting me. He's avidly saying not nice things to me in interview or about me in interviews. What do you want? What do you want from me? Like, leave me alone.
Johnny Silvestri's excuse that he was in any way groomed into thinking any of this was acceptable by Colleen Ballinger could be true. However, it does not excuse and never will excuse the fact that he was still doing this for years, even weeks after publicly announcing that adults doing this is objectively bad in every way possible.
It's inappropriate for adults to be friends with children.
It also doesn't excuse something I can reveal here exclusively. At the end of July, just a few days ago, Johnny Silvestri created a group chat that he added Adam McIntyre into, as well as many of Colleen Ballinger's victims. Victims that Johnny has been publicly and privately corresponding with since they were minors, including the member of the Johnny Stans group chat that Johnny has been having private correspondence with since they were 13 years old. Meaning Johnny is still adding this person into group chats even today, while Johnny was saying this to me.
I was on tinychat.com to connect, and it became a place where adults took advantage of some of the features, preyed on us, and used the website as a tool to groom us. And I got wrapped up in that. It was the gateway tool. This is what made them feel so comfortable to eventually create Twitter group chats with a younger audience.
Johnny was creating Twitter group chats just days ago with his younger audience, and make no mistake, this fan still pops up in the comments of Johnny's live streams. They're still a fan. Based on all of the context we shared with Adam, he has implied to us that the very act of Johnny creating this group chat in hindsight now seems quite disturbing to him.
I'm only going to read the message that Johnny wrote at the start of the group chat. He wrote, "Hey guys, people have been extra nasty lately, so I just wanted to check in and see how y'all's mental health is doing. Y'all doing all right?" So this was whenever the Reddit on him was really starting to put the information about him being a hypocrite. One of the members, I won't say who, very loosely said something along the lines of, "Thanks for checking in. I didn't even realize people were being extra nasty." So one of the members basically was saying like, no, like we haven't been seeing that. It hasn't been happening to us. It was his way of trying to like bring us all into this umbrella of he's going down, so we're all going down. And I have not wrote a single message in that group, and I don't blame anyone who has in that group, but it just feels incredibly like trying to get everyone ready to jump with you. And it just feels incredibly like, I hope know that they're being used, because I can see that I am now.
The National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children has defined grooming as a form of abuse where, quote, someone builds a relationship, trust, and emotional connection with a child or young person so they can manipulate, exploit, and abuse them. Some of the warning signs of grooming include trust development and keeping secrets, which they described as abusers' attempt to gain trust of a potential victim through gifts, attention, sharing secrets, and other means to make them feel they have a caring relationship and to train them to keep the relationship a secret. But the way Johnny has defined grooming involves power imbalances between adult entertainers and their underage fans, building up friendships with minors who don't know any better, promises that were broken, and adults speaking to minors in group and video chats. Johnny had his own superfans. Johnny built relationships with a number of minors for years. Johnny promised people he had left these group chats after his employment with Colleen ended and lied about it. Johnny has spoken to these fans publicly and privately and had secrets with them for years. But on top of all of that, Johnny has given his fans so much attention, both publicly and privately. He is very committed to keeping the specifics of those relationships a secret. At least 2 of his fans had the immediate reaction to try to get me to keep parts of this story a secret.
Programming, manipulation, tactics, love bombing, words of affirmation they use towards people when they're in sticky situations that make these people feel good and inclined to go online and fight for them.
So I just want to ask a very simple question. Based on Johnny's very own flexible definition of grooming, as well as the actual definition of grooming, who in the story I'm telling today fits the bill on both? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And I hate to have to be the one to break it to you, Johnny, but Cody Tyler was full on canceled for very similar reasons. They admitted to their own wrongdoing in the comments of their now unprivated video and didn't want to deflect accountability, and they deplatformed themselves. Between Cody Tyler and Johnny Silvestri, is there a feeling of betrayal? And if there is, who do you think may have betrayed you worse?
I think Johnny is the worst. Johnny actively spent weeks painting a picture for me to believe that I was inferior to him, and that Becky was inferior to him, and that Oliver was inferior to him, that without platforming his stories, our stories don't look as good in comparison because, you know, his one's the main story. He worked tirelessly for people to believe a narrative. Like, bravo. But then you realize what he was working on was pretending to be a victim, and it just is crazy. I think Johnny is worse than both of them, and I never thought that I would ever sit down here and say that there was a person worse than Cody Tyler for me personally, but congratulations, Cody. Enjoy your computer. You're off the hook. Johnny's, you know, the worst. This sounds so harsh to say. I think Johnny has done so much damage to victims. It doesn't take away from the Colleen situation, and it doesn't take away from what we've all experienced, and it doesn't take away from things you've gone through. It doesn't take away from things your audience have gone through, my audience, and we deserve to call him out. He deserves to face the repercussions for it. That doesn't take away from the fact that every single other person here is currently going through something and has stayed true to their word.
What we are looking at is someone who has lied. It's really as simple as that. The only thing that anyone needs to remember is the truth has spoken through you. The truth has spoken through the other victims. And when someone lies, the only story that it invalidates is their own. So before I wrap this section up, I need to directly address the Johnny stans and everybody who has spoken out privately to me. I have a feeling that your gut instinct here might be anger, confusion, and sadness over having all of your friends' story exposed to the world. It's why I haven't named you, even though you're adults now, because all of this started when you were kids. Your experiences are valid, and just like I believe these people who have spoken against Johnny, I believe you, but I also need to know why Johnny himself told me your correspondence was inappropriate and wrong. On top of that, I hope in time that you can realize that in so many ways you have been lied to, you have been manipulated, you have been in private correspondence with a man who wants that correspondence to be kept a secret. That man was best friends with an alleged and he shared some of those video chats with him, even when alcohol was involved. We know you were in open correspondence with that alleged predator, and I am so sorry that you had to live through that experience. It is not your fault in any way whatsoever. You did nothing wrong. But the man we're talking about today, Johnny Silvestri, in my opinion, has conditioned you to feel as though you need to defend the actions that he has made as a 27-year-old adult. It is not your responsibility to defend him, and it never was. There is one common thread between the anonymous people who will speak out later against Johnny Silvestri and you. All of you are speaking out because of Johnny Silvestri. And I hope in time you understand why I'm saying all of this, because no matter how you react to this section of this doc, I see you, I hear you, and I support you. And I'm here for you if you want to message me. Now, a genuine disclaimer for all of the children or former children out there listening who have been a part of or have knowledge of these other group chats. I'm sorry, it's just so disturbing to me. Just because this was a smaller part of today's doc doesn't mean I'm not concerned for your well-being. I believe that these men preyed on you, and we want to hear your story, all while providing you a safe space to share it. Now, the name of this group chat has been censored at the request of our speaker, but we encourage them, should they wish, to come forward. And if any of you watching experienced anything at the hands of these individuals and you want to, please contact us at swooptips@gmail.com or at Team Swoop on Reddit if you have any tips regarding this extremely disturbing development. So after that absolutely wild bombshell, I was left sitting on a half-finished doc and a 6-hour interview with Johnny, where he basically admits to something just as disturbing as anything Colleen Ballinger has been accused of. And no, none of this absolves Colleen Ballinger. There's an intermingling here and also separate events. Now, I already knew that Johnny had lied to me before, but I had to ask, what else did Johnny lie about? Spoiler alert, pretty much everything Johnny Silvestri told me appears to be either a lie, a half-truth, or a blatant exaggeration. Some of the shit that he told me wasn't even shit that happened to him, it was things that happened to Adam. And speaking of Adam, what is your understanding of what Johnny's allegations against Josh are?
Privately, no substance. I mean, I've asked, and the response has been like, almost as if like, why would you ask? That's all I know. I'm aware of him going on like every podcast saying that I don't know why people aren't talking about Josh because Josh is a worse scrimmer than Colleen and Josh is worse than Colleen and shout it from the rooftops. But whenever I've confronted it privately, I don't know the situation. Johnny will say that he's a worse abuser than Colleen, and I'm like, abuser? Worse? What happened here? And then it's like, oh, like, of course you already know. And I'm like, but I don't know anything. I was getting asked about it on my Twitch streams and I didn't have a response to it. And why under God was I still following Josh if he's a worse abuser than Colleen? And I'm asking what happened, and it's like, why would you ask that? Like, of course he's worse than Colleen.
What I'm about to play is what Johnny is actually alleging.
So he knew very little about me, but for whatever reason, he just really leeched on and honed in on me. He says that he saw a lot of himself in me, which I don't, but maybe for him, there was some truth in that. So maybe it was kind of more of a mentorship perspective at first, but then he liked the attention he was getting out of it, and it turned into something more sinister. Because he himself says he's gotten abused. It doesn't automatically give you a free pass and make you a good person because you acknowledge it now.
As he puts it, Joshua got close to Johnny, gave him his number, spent one-on-one time with him, befriended the family, and Johnny even says the word himself, sinister. And to be fair, it sounds sinister. But what's interesting to note is that everything Johnny describes is so very public and very much not isolating. Now, I didn't know just how public Johnny and Joshua's relationship or lack thereof was at the time I interviewed him, though. So I asked for more details. How many times had you interacted with Josh? I'm talking about before you met him in New York.
The interactions I had with him before were very minimal. I talked to Colleen more than anything, so he knew very little about me.
In 2012, we would primarily tiny chat with Colleen and Trent.
Josh would pop in every once in a while, but he would only do it with Colleen.
Is it weird that adults were in these tiny chat conversations? Yes. It is. And again, it's like, well, Johnny has admitted to me that he himself has been an adult in group chats with minors for years, even after his employment with Colleen Ballinger ended, and he believed there was nothing wrong with it. Can you tell me about how many times you would estimate that you hung out with Josh in person?
Yes. Now, when I say hang out, I don't want people to have this perception like I was chilling in his living room. We would be in public places. He would be doing something, some show, and I was going as a supporter. He would say stuff to me like, come to California for my show. And I'd be like, are you serious? And he'd be like, yeah, come on down. And I'd be like, whoa, sick. He would allude to things like that. Like, I'd be like, okay, you know, I'll come to California. I'll come see your show. We should grab a coffee or something while I'm out there. And he'd be like, yeah, for sure.
Okay, hang on a second here. We've heard this story from Johnny like a few places. Johnny has claimed everywhere that Josh was inviting him to shows.
Telling me I didn't understand boundaries. Because after New York, that was just the beginning of things. I started getting invited to shows. I had tweeted him about his California show, and I was like, should I come? And he was like, yes, please do. And then I was like, okay.
Now, full disclosure, but Johnny Silvestri had admitted to me on record multiple times that he very recently wiped most of his old Twitter history away. I wonder why he did that. But as you'll see, there's a lot he didn't erase, like this conversation that Johnny has claimed was his invite to come to Joshua's show in California. So Joshua publicly announces a show on Twitter, and Johnny responds with, quote, all good things happen in LA. It's official. I'm moving there next week. See you at the show. Just kidding. Or am I? And Joshua responds with, please come. That's it. That's the entire interaction. That is what Johnny is calling Joshua inviting him out to California to come to his show. I actually love this interaction because if by Johnny's logic this is a direct invitation to a show, then by extension I guess I was invited too, and I didn't even know it. And so were you, and you didn't even know it. So thanks, Joshua D-Town. And it's probably worth noting right here that Johnny literally says in the tweet he's, quote, moving there next week. When you take the picture as a whole, with Joshua only ever responding to Johnny's fandom tweets and rarely, if ever, to his private messages, it is a possibility and quite likely that Joshua may have even believed Johnny was telling the truth about moving to California, because why would Johnny lie about something like moving across the country? Now, it's very important to start by noting that Johnny hasn't provided us with his texts after multiple requests to see if these conversations continued over there. But Johnny has also said that they didn't really communicate there because he didn't want to abuse his access to Joshua's phone number.
Okay, and then you guys started texting like on a one-on-one basis?
Not super regularly because I didn't want to abuse it. I didn't want to lose this privilege.
And remember, Johnny says that their relationship was mostly on Twitter publicly.
It was more so like Twitter based. It was more of a public relationship, which makes me almost wonder if it was more performative than anything.
Now, if you remember, in one of his DMs to Joshua, Johnny invited himself to a show in Minnesota saying, quote, I was going to surprise you and show up to a show on Friday, but I didn't have an address for it, so surprise, I'm going. What's the address? And Joshua responded with the address and said, quote, you're going, question mark, question mark? Woo! Josh isn't the only one that Johnny has done this to. Johnny tweeted in reference to Colleen, quote, she bailed on her plans super last minute one day and to make things better, invited me to New York to see her Broadway debut. But he attached a screenshot of text where Colleen mentions that she's doing a Broadway show. There's no invite there. And once again, Johnny invites himself saying, it's a done deal, I have to come. Johnny has claimed to be 17 years old during this trip.
You know, just doing the damn thing since I was 17. It ain't no big deal.
This California show he's talking about was on May 20th, 2015. According to Johnny, his birthday is May 24th, 1996, which would make him 18. Well, to be exact, it would make him 4 days away from turning 19. Now, we are certain of this date because this was the first stop of a show known as the Shadows Tour, which was this kitschy boy band type project like that Joshua Evans had with 2 other men that were husbands of more famous women. Like, get it, from Out of the Shadows.
There was one instance where I had gone out for his show that he encouraged me to go to. I was having a lot of trouble getting a rental car. The 2.5 hours I spent at Hertz, I had called Josh, I had called Colleen, I had texted each of them. I'm stuck in LA. I need to be in Irvine tonight to see your show that you encouraged me to come to. Can somebody pick me up?
Now, another thing that I'd like to point out is that in the state of California, you have to be at least 18 to rent a car, as it's a legally binding contract, and you have to be an adult to enter a legally binding contract, which makes sense because Johnny was 18, about to turn 19, not 17, like he's about to claim.
Because there's a story about how I came out to him one night when I flew all the way out to California to see one of his shows, and I was only like 17.
And there's also a revelation in the story that Johnny also had Colleen Ballinger's phone number at this time, an interesting detail that Johnny had never previously divulged before.
But I had called Josh, I had called Colleen, I had texted each of them.
And I find it odd how much he blasts Joshua for giving him his phone number, but never mentions Colleen doing it. And this is years before he worked for her.
I had invited my friend at the time to go see the show with me. Improv at the Irvine Spectrum here in California. Colleen, Trisha Paytas, Jenna Marbles, Shane Dawson, all these like A-list YouTubers pile in and sit at a table right in front of us. And then she looks at me and she goes, "Oh my God, you made it. I was so worried about you." They were gonna go on and start this show. She was just gonna sit with Shane and Trish and have a fantastic night watching her hubby mope on stage about how he was stuck in her shadows while little Johnny was trapped over by LAX.
Now, I'll also underscore that Los Angeles and Irvine are like an hour apart from each other one way, could be 2 hours depending on the traffic. Johnny should know that because he lived in Orange County until last month. Like, I'm not sure why Johnny would have expected a performer to leave suddenly before their show to drive 2 to 4 hours round trip to pick up a fan. That would actually be inappropriate, especially since in the version of the story that Johnny tells, he's allegedly 17 years old. I mean, can you imagine if Joshua had gotten a car, drove and picked him up, just one-on-one, 2 of them in a car? If that had actually happened, Johnny would be dragging him to high hell right now if he did that. But now Johnny's criticizing him for not doing that.
They were gonna go on and start this show while little Johnny was trapped over by LAX.
Now, as the show was going on and Colleen left for the night, something happened that in the grand story of Johnny Silvestri is one of the main stories you may have heard before.
Josh was wrapping up his meet and greet. My friend and I went outside. Josh walks up to us, is like, "I have to go inside and like grab stuff." Finally comes back, and that's the night that I told him, this was 2015, "I'm gay." And he looked at me and said, "Well, that's none of my business."
Now, we're going to circle back to the coming out story in a bit because obviously that is a serious story for Johnny. But right now, we need to clarify Johnny's age for a very important reason.
This was days before my birthday. I think days before my 18th birthday.
There it is. Days before my 18th birthday. That is an untruth, and he has repeated that in every telling of this story.
There's a story about how I came out to him one night and I was only like 17.
So here's Johnny confirming his birthday to me, May 24th, 1996. Here's Johnny's post about that show where he says he came out to Joshua. Look at the date, May 21st, 2015, 12:15 a.m. and 39 seconds, because I am a thorough bitch today, making him an almost 19-year-old legally adult man and not the child he has pretended to be in every other telling of this story.
Because I was 17 at the time. This is the trip that he told me to go out there. I think I also mentioned to you guys that I was stuck at Hertz.
When he made you come to his show but didn't pay for your flight or your ticket?
Yes. And then I got stuck. I got stranded at the car rental place for hours and called both of them and left them voice messages as a 17-year-old all by himself.
Which they received.
The reason this age distinction is so important is because the way Johnny has told this story, it leads Lily and Jesse to say that Josh made him come to his show but didn't pay for his flight, which is factually incorrect. But here's where it actually gets sinister. If that accusation were to stand, that an adult man made a minor fly across state lines to see him, that is quite literally accusing Joshua of child That's what makes these lies so dangerous.
Well, because you had mentioned that, like, because to rent a car you have to be 25, but that you had a loophole because you have a...
Yes, we had a loophole that the car rental place unfortunately did not realize.
There was no loophole for a 17-year-old in California to rent a car. Johnny was a legal adult. Now, let's get to the coming out story, starting with him telling his parents. Now, this is actually from his 18th birthday, and Johnny combines them to give the illusion that Joshua is even worse than Johnny made you think he was before.
I had gone home on May 24th, the morning of my birthday, sat at my kitchen table, wanted so badly to tell my parents, who were just so excited to see me. I was back home. I wanted to tell them more than anything, and I was scared.
I'm so sorry. Such a vulnerable position to be in, and it just makes me emotional even thinking about how difficult that must be. Now, this was obviously a very sensitive topic, and to make sure we weren't misinterpreting such a sensitive and sacred event, we found Johnny's public Facebook post where he described in detail how scared he was to come out to his parents. Sadly, this is a common fear people have for a myriad of reasons. It is heartbreaking, and I have no interest in questioning his fear of coming out to his family, none. I didn't want to include this at all, but as Johnny has referenced his coming out story multiple times across countless media platforms and attached it to accusations, it would be irresponsible of me to not at least mention it here. In reality, I was deeply troubled by the thought that Joshua could have discouraged him or anyone for coming out, so we had to investigate why Josh may have allegedly responded that way. When he was indicating to not talk to your parents, did he explain why he felt that way?
He was alluding that they were gonna kick me out and disown me for being gay, because I grew up in a very Catholic, conservative household. Loosely, it's like traditional, if you will.
Do you think that he was trying to say it in a protective way, like, I don't want you to get hurt by your parents?
I don't know. He knew my parents, so like just insulted on their behalf as well. If it was a situation where he was like, I don't know how to handle this, if he thought I had some crush on him, bold to assume you're attractive enough for me to have a crush on you, Mr. David Evans. And that's not even like bagging on him for his looks. He's clearly an attractive dude, but the personality is what does it for me. And he ain't got the one that I'm attracted to.
Now, I asked Joshua about his side of the coming out story. It's the fair thing to do here, which I will share with you later. But for right now, out of respect, I'm going to let this story live where it is, so we'll move on. Let's back up for a second. Way back to that last Twitter DM from Johnny to Joshua, dated March 16th, 2015, that he staunchly refers to as the last time he ever spoke to Josh, period. He said Josh had groomed him and eventually ghosted him on this date.
My last DM to him was March 16th, 2015 at 6:22 p.m. And I said, hey, I need to talk to you ASAP. He did not respond to that, and then I think that was around the time the divorce was happening, so in hindsight, don't expect him to respond to that. Like, he's clearly going through real life shit. But that is the last interaction I ever had with this man.
This triggered a profound sense of confusion for me and my team, raising more questions than answers. First, the facts. Joshua and Colleen announced their split in September 2016, not March 2015. Joshua and Colleen didn't even get married until July 2nd, 2015. So this DM not only was not ignored by Joshua during their divorce, it was ignored by Joshua before they even got married. Now, I would suggest that Johnny could just be confused about the dates, except that this wasn't even the last message Joshua responded to. In fact, Joshua hadn't responded to a Twitter DM since January 30th, 2014, which is 1 year, 1 month, and 16 days prior. And there were many interactions between Johnny and Joshua after March 16th, 2015, including the very date we've been discussing, the Shadows show, May 20th, 2015, months later, where Johnny showed up to a show of Joshua's in California and came out to him while he was packing up and leaving. I don't know why he's been saying that was the last interaction they had. He literally flew across the country and met him in person. You know, and it reminds me of something Joshua mentioned in his apology. I gave you the illusion that I could be that friend, which at the time I thought I could be until I began to realize the amount of attachment you were feeling. And even though Johnny has deleted many tweets, there are still a ton of tweets after this date where they continued making casual comments to each other for over a year. And again, Johnny continued going to more of Colleen and Joshua's shows. So this statement,
That is the last interaction I ever had with this man,
is categorically false. I want to stress for a moment just how important it seems to be to Johnny that we all know the center of his grooming allegations against Joshua relates to the idea of ghosting. That Joshua David Evans ghosted a 20-year-old man named Jonathan Silvestri.
This man I literally felt like was an older brother to me. He just ghosted me. He went ghost.
We know that's not true. Johnny not only flew to see Joshua around 2 months after that message, and as far as we can tell, their last public Twitter interaction was in August 2016. Johnny had tweeted to Josh and Josh replied, and I should note that Johnny has since deleted his tweet. Now, Johnny has continually left out the actual context of what was happening when he was, quote, ghosted in late 2016. So here's that context. In 2016, Colleen and Joshua were going through a brutal public divorce that left Joshua, as he's put it, devastated and with nothing. And the fandom attacked him mercilessly.
Fought a lot of battles for her, got way too involved in their divorce. All of us did, all of us fans did, and you'll see tweets about that.
Now we asked Adam about Johnny's involvement in that.
He loves to spread this online where he says about, I was equally on Josh's side. Johnny was one of the main people coming for Josh behind the scenes as well, and I know that for a fact. So it's so weird to me, this like thing he plays of I was on both sides and, you know, Josh messed around with me and that's why I turned against him and stuff.
I was gonna, fight for both of them and try to remain a loyal supporter to both of them because I truly did care about both of them.
No, like the way we all acknowledge that we all did turn on Josh, Johnny was one of the main people as well that did that, if not more so because he had this personal connection to Colleen and him saying, I was playing both sides because I, love them both and stuff. I'm sorry, but to a certain level, that is just bullshit.
Now, Joshua has also shared that he was heavily battling the disease of addiction, was suicidal, and was trying to drink himself to death.
Don't go and throw negative stuff at Colleen. I love her. I'm in love with her. I wish nothing but success and happiness for her. And that just does not involve me anymore.
And for years after that, Joshua isolated himself and stepped away from social media, all while Colleen Ballinger was working behind the scenes to weaponize the entire fandom against him, including Johnny.
I love you guys, and I hope I'll come back. I really want to come back. I just can't be here now. I gotta go find some kind of peace.
And for the next 7 years, Johnny chose Colleen.
And so now we're all besties and we can all trauma bond over that piece of shit.
Now, not only is that the wrong use of the phrase trauma bond, but Johnny doesn't distinguish that not even a month after Josh, his friend's divorce, went public, Johnny posted a resignation letter on the Saradiculous account heavily shading Joshua. Now, for those who don't know, and this is some necessary context, Saradiculous is a character created by Josh that, to put it simply, is kind of like a blonde bimbo booze hound type character that's basically Josh Evans dressed in drag. Yeah, super cringe. Now, Johnny Silvestri took it upon himself to run a Saradiculous fan account in 2013, and at this time Josh was thinking of starting his own character account, much like how Colleen Ballinger had started the Miranda Sings account. So Joshua reached out to the fan who he believed was running the account to ask them if they wanted to run the official Saradiculous account, which was created in the same month. Now, that person told Josh that Johnny was actually the one running the fan account, and since Josh had Johnny's number, he texted. I don't know who started the text, but there were texts asking Johnny if he would like to run his account, which led to Johnny running the account for about 3 years.
The account, but I hacked it when I was drunk a few years ago and made it And I made the profile picture Charlie XCX with big boobs.
Period.
Now, Johnny has very publicly used this ridiculous story as a way to try to compare his story to Adam's, who you might remember was entrusted with running the successful Miranda Sings Twitter account with a direct promise from Colleen of eventual financial compensation. But even though both Adam and Johnny were creating content for Twitter accounts, there is a mountain of differences between their stories. For starters, Colleen baited Adam for content with the promise of an actual paid job. Joshua literally gave the account over to Johnny with no talk of compensation at all because Joshua didn't seem to give a shit about the account. And unlike Adam, Johnny has claimed that any guidance he received running this account was minimal at best. He has never claimed that he had to run any tweets past Joshua before posting. Now, even in that screenshot, Joshua gave him free reign to post whenever he wanted. And if you scroll a little further down, you might notice a letter from October 2016 signed by a familiar name. It says, quote, "Hey everyone, I just wanted to post this note to let you all know that I won't be tweeting from this account any longer. Josh asked me to help him run the account back in 2013, and I've been in charge of running the tweets, tweeting them, and maintaining the account ever since. I just don't feel right about coming up with all the content, jokes, tweets, etc. without getting any credit, so I'm stepping away. Hope you understand, Johnny Silvestri." And then it links Johnny's Twitter and YouTube accounts.
I eventually wrote when he just totally dumped me. I wrote a statement on that Twitter account and just said, I don't feel comfortable running this account anymore for someone who has completely written me off.
Now, a 20-year-old man, Johnny Silvestri, posted this resignation 1 month after the divorce. Oh wait, hold on, let me check the notes really quick. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, that's wrong. Colleen Ballinger released her divorce announcement on September 30th, 2016. Johnny, a 20-year-old man, released his pissy resignation statement on October 4th, 2016. It wasn't 1 month after the divorce, it was 4 days. 4 days. 4 days after the divorce.
Johnny was one of the main people coming for Josh behind the scenes as well, and I know that for a fact.
Johnny would like everyone to believe that he was trying to be there for his friend during what Joshua has characterized as the darkest time of his life.
He just ghosted me. He went ghost. I think I even tried to text him and say, did I upset you? Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you were really there for your suicidal friend in those 4 days, right, John? No, I'm sorry, I know I get a little heated at times during this, but it has been a long couple of months dealing with it. So I'm just gonna say this. I personally have been in the trenches of being suicidal. I had a plan, I had a method, and I had a date. To find yourself at a place where you legitimately don't care about living. The one thing you can't come back from. It is the darkest, most sinister, most soul-crushing pit of despair and pain unlike anything else on the planet. I don't care what transpires between two people. If one of them genuinely wants to die, and you're mad they didn't tweet you back, I have to ask, where is your f***ing humanity? Johnny, I pray to God you never come anywhere close to experiencing the agony of legitimately not wanting to live anymore. I genuinely just want you to get help and stop treating people like this. It's not okay. Moving on. When Johnny got home after this trip, it was on his birthday, to which Johnny says his gift was the infamous birthday video that Johnny posted on Twitter. And then in the comments, he called Joshua Evans a predator for making the video.
What's up, Johnny? Happy birthday, man. Today's a big day for you, and I just wanted to make you a little video to let you know that I was thinking about you on your birthday. I believe in you. I'm proud of you.
That was part of a compilation of all my personal family friends, and like Trent partook. They told me now that they had asked him if he would do it, and he said yes, absolutely. And then they had to hound him and be like, dude, You said you'd make the video. Like, come on. Like, you're the only person we're waiting on. You're not Beyonce. Get on your phone and just say, hey, Johnny, happy birthday. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant. You said you'd do it.
Joshua did not make this video unprovoked. Per Johnny's own words, Johnny's family had to hound Joshua to make it. To make a birthday video for Johnny that Johnny has now weaponized online, calling Joshua a for making that video that they pressured him to make.
You're not Beyonce. Get on your phone and just say, hey, Johnny, happy birthday.
In fact, this isn't the first time Johnny's family hounded Joshua. His family has done this multiple times. The year before, on Johnny's 17th birthday, Johnny's sister DM'd Joshua saying, quote, hey Josh, wanted to let you know Johnny's B-Day is Friday, May 24th. Make sure to show him some love. It literally wasn't even a request. It was a command. Details and context matters when you were calling people a predator. I'm sorry to everyone watching this that I now have to do this, but I need to present the definition of the word alone. Alone, having no one else present. Early on in the interview, Johnny said the following.
He's making comments like me and him haven't hung out alone. Bullshit.
So later on, I wanted to get more insight into the time they spent alone, and I asked Johnny the following. Did you ever hang out with Josh just one-on-one, alone with Josh? Per Johnny's own recollection to me, in fact, he only ever remembers spending any time alone with Joshua twice.
I can at least count on 2 separate occasions. There was the one where we had our little coffee date at Starbucks when I went to the auto show to visit him. That was just me and him.
But it wasn't alone. The first instance was at a Starbucks inside the convention center at the auto show that Johnny popped up at in public, surrounded by hundreds if not thousands of people while Joshua was on a lunch break at his job. The other instance was a year later at a show where Johnny again admits he surprised Joshua by traveling for hours and showing up in Wisconsin.
There was also a time he was doing a show in Wisconsin. He was in a band called the Cat's Pajamas. So I surprised him.
Even the Irvine Shadows tour story happened not only in public, but with Johnny's best friend and accused groomer Tim Connolly by his side. Every other photo Johnny has shared of himself with Joshua is either from a meet and greet where they would have like a few minutes to chat, or from running into him at a show that he surprised him at. Now, if you want to be technical, it appears Jonathan Silvestri has never actually been alone with Joshua David Evans, the man he's accused of grooming him. Now, while reviewing my interview with Johnny and his statements in other interviews, he continually referenced times that he hung out with Josh, most often citing a coffee date, Josh having dinner with his family, and times they made content for their channels. The way Johnny tells these stories makes it sound like there were many instances of them hanging out, spread over a long period of time. In reality, his stories about this coffee date and there was a dinner with the family, those all happened in the same couple of days where Johnny and his family showed up and surprised Joshua at the auto show he was working at. So they showed up at his place of work while he was working. Johnny referred to it as a coffee date, which was actually just he showed up. Joshua was like, let's get a coffee here in the convention center with hundreds, if not thousands of people also present. And the dinner that they had was the family saying, hey, you're working the auto show. Do you want to come over for a couple of hours for dinner?
This is like so... I actually have no words, because to think that that is what the defenders have been defending. Like, the picture has been that Josh is a creep who's like showing up at the door of Johnny, watching step to step, and that was why we should be listening to the Josh thing more than the Colleen thing. And this isn't a competition on who we should be listening to more, but the fact that like that is what it...
Yeah. So the Silvestri family made a trip back in 2012 to go to see a Colleen Ballinger show in New York. And now the whole Silvestri family goes to the Chicago Auto Show to see Joshua, who is working for a car company. They came to his place of work, then invited him to dinner. Let me also point out that at that dinner with Josh and Johnny's family, Johnny told me that he and his parents were razzling Joshua over why he had not yet proposed to Colleen.
Me and my family, even the night we had dinner, my parents were just razzling him a little bit, and they were like, so when are you gonna put a ring on it? And he was like, soon, I promise. I just want to be the main breadwinner, and da-da-da-da-da. And me and my parents and my sister were kind of like, do you know who you're marrying? Like she's like in her prime right now on YouTube, and no offense, dude, but you're selling cars at the Chicago Auto Show.
Firstly, I can't underscore how inappropriate it is to pressure anyone to make a life-altering decision like a marriage proposal, especially when it comes to a relationship that you know nothing about. And Johnny, you knew nothing about that relationship because you were not in it. Johnny is very aware now that Joshua has said he was domestically abused in his relationship with Colleen, yet Johnny felt it important to drag him in our interview for not proposing to Colleen, his alleged abuser, soon enough. You were a grown man in an abusive relationship and you stayed in it. And follows it up to my face by saying this.
He actively chose to remain in this relationship. He had so many outs. He didn't propose for like 9 years. Why did you enter a marriage that was so toxic if you knew it was so bad? You must have wanted something out of it, and it bit you in the ass. He fucked around and found out, and now he's just upset about it.
Johnny not only shamed Joshua for not proposing to Colleen soon enough, but he also shamed him for not leaving soon enough, stating that an alleged domestic survivor, quote, f***ed around and found out. And he said that for the entire world to see, for anyone like you out there who has survived abuse. And I know that you're out there, and I am so sorry you have to hear disgusting words like his. And he said that to my face, knowing that I'm a survivor of DV. So sorry, fellow survivors, but according to Jonathan Silvestri, I guess we all f***ed around and found out.
At this point, I don't care that he was a victim, because we're not talking about that story anymore. If he wanted to talk about that story, he had every opportunity in 2016.
I'm not even going to waste my breath explaining how absolutely disgusting it is to shame a survivor that you acknowledged is a victim for both not marrying their alleged abuser soon enough and for not getting out of the abusive relationship soon enough. And that you would say you don't care that he's a victim because we're not talking about that story anymore. He had his chance to tell his story in 2016, literally saying that a survivor of DV has a timestamp on when they're allowed to talk about their story, and that this survivor's time to share his has passed by, so he should just shut up. Like, hey, Johnny, didn't your story of ghosting happen in 2016? You didn't talk about it then, so I guess your clock is up, John. I'm sorry I'm getting heated, but if being ghosted somehow equates to surviving DV, again, he said that to my face, knowing I'm a survivor, this goes against everything that I stand for. You've heard me say a million times, if you're a survivor, you are valid. And if you choose to tell your story, and you don't have to, but if you do, it's on your time and your time alone. I am livid about this. No one gets to gatekeep when a DV survivor shares their story, and Johnny Silvestri came on my platform to tell all of you, this community of survivors who I hold sacred, that you're not allowed to tell your story if you waited too long, because his story is more important than anyone else's. He tried to use me to platform that bullshit. F that. F off with all of that. And again, I'm sorry for my emotion right now. But I'm here to tell all of you who have survived the darkness of abuse, assault, shame, isolation, that you are legends among us, and you can share your story whenever you damn well please, period. But I won't waste my breath saying that. Instead, I'll just use Johnny's word to describe Johnny. Sinister.
Turned into something more sinister.
And on top of that, John then belittles Joshua working for an auto show, the very show that he and his family showed up at to be supportive, and insinuated that Joshua should propose to Colleen, Josh's alleged abuser, because she's a celebrity that he should lock down since he's just a car salesman.
Do you know who you're marrying? Like she's like in her prime right now on YouTube, and no offense, dude, but you're selling cars at the Chicago Auto Show.
Now, I shared all of this as well as one other thing that Johnny said to Adam. And he also said, I don't care that Joshua is a victim. He had his chance to tell his story in 2016. We're not talking about it anymore.
Give me a moment. Jesus. I think it's incredibly ironic that Johnny hones in on the fact that you had your chance to speak. First of all, putting aside how victim blaming that is and how, you know, apparently you can only be a victim a year after it happens, whatever, putting that aside, right? I think it's incredibly ironic for Johnny to say you had your chance to speak up in 2016, considering Johnny was one of the main people bullying Josh into silence. He couldn't have spoken up in 2016. He couldn't have 2017, 18, 19, 20. Look what happened to me in 2020, and I wasn't her husband. I was just by her and her fans, a crazy fan. Could you imagine being the crazy ex-husband? There was not a world in which he could speak up, and for Johnny to use that terminology against him is incredibly ironic, because I will bet you something now, if some person had used that against Johnny, we would not hear the end of it on Twitter. And I cannot believe that he said that about someone. I honestly cannot believe that.
Here's the truth. We got over an hour and a half into our conversation, and Johnny hadn't made any concrete allegations against Joshua David Evans, except that he was a predator and sinister. I was trying to give him time while also needing a more solid answer to work with if my team was going to investigate on his behalf. Now, full transparency, I had to ask Johnny respectfully at least 3 times in the 6-hour interview if he would explain exactly, if he would please just explain exactly how he was allegedly groomed by Joshua David Evans. I don't like having to ask anyone this, and I even asked Johnny multiple times if I had his consent to ask these tough questions. The questions may not always feel comfortable, and just know that I am not here to make you feel overwhelmed in any way. If you need to take a break, or if there's something that you're like, you know what, I'm done with that question, move on, just let me know, and I will move kind of according to you. I would like to begin to shift into Joshua Evans. His first answer went on a 10-minute tangent that ventured into Trent, Colleen, and Corey, 2 of whom Johnny directly told me did not groom him. So I asked Johnny to explain for a quicker soundbite. You have obviously said that you believe that Josh groomed you.
Yes.
Can you just give me a summary of exactly what Josh did that has made you feel that way?
Josh has an ego, a massive one, and it's one that I can pinpoint and address, not even knowing the dude on a personal level to this day. He took the power that he had over me, and it turned into this God complex where I think to this day, he has this skewed idea that he was being a mentor. He was a dude pushing 30 who leached on to a vulnerable kid when he was in town. We did the Harlem Shake video. We filmed a little goofy, stupid video for my channel. There was a contest he did once. There were like maybe 8 of us who submitted videos. I won, and my prize was a ball of duct tape. It's just the little things if you look at them and see the patterns.
So to recap Johnny's answer as to exactly how Joshua allegedly groomed him, he said, Josh has an ego, a God complex. He thought he was a mentor. He was pushing 30 and leached. They created unoriginal trending Harlem Shake content at the auto show his whole family showed up at, and that Johnny entered a contest for a ball of duct tape and won a ball of duct tape that he still has. I gently asked him multiple times and tried to get a concise answer. Here's what he said, and I will sprinkle in the additional context that was left out. Again, if you could, I'm sorry for asking a second time.
No, that's
but I just want to kind of nail down exactly, specifically what you think were the kind of the exact things that Josh did that leave you feeling like you were groomed.
Yeah, so first and foremost, giving a 16-year-old your phone number unprovoked.
Full context that we know, Johnny had mentioned to Josh that he was depressed around this time. Joshua said he would mentor Johnny, and Josh gave his phone number in front of Johnny's parents while Johnny was networking. Johnny showed the number to his parents, and they were excited that maybe he was getting his big break. They literally said, our kid's doing the damn thing.
Our kid's doing the damn thing.
He continues.
Hanging out with the person one-on-one.
The instances they hung out were always in public, and most often when Johnny's family members were with him, and the remaining time when Johnny was an adult.
Having conversations about our personal lives, getting to know me on an intimate level. Fast forwarding to today, I feel more confident to say I was groomed.
If there were conversations about their personal lives on an intimate level, Johnny has not shared these with me or seemingly anybody. If there is more, I wasn't able to get it in the 6-hour interview. This man repeatedly told all of you who asked him to explain how he was groomed. He always deflected by tweeting things like, I don't have to explain myself again, listen to Swoop. Well, thanks for listening to what Johnny said in that instance, because hi, Swoop here. I think this man is full of shit and a victim blamer, allegedly. After Johnny told me before about how Josh having a big ego meant he was a groomer, I decided to give Johnny another moment to get back on track, and I asked him, but not everyone understands that grooming doesn't always have a sexual component to it or a kind of end goal, that it can have different attempts at what it's leading towards. What do you think that Josh was grooming you for?
The most disturbing part, you would think it would be super disturbing if it was sexual, but that would just be pretty cut and dry. But never once did I ever feel like these people wanted to come on to me sexually, any intent to exploit me in any ways. No.
Yeah, so maybe this is a good time to address another issue I face with Johnny Silvestri. He used my own quote about how not all grooming is sex to make the point that to him, his non-sex grooming is worse. Johnny was made very aware on multiple occasions that as a child, I was groomed and repeatedly sexually abused for years.
The most disturbing part, you would think it would be super disturbing if it was sexual, but that would just be pretty cut and dry. People don't quite understand what grooming is, which is why I appreciated your breakdown of it in the first segment. I actually highlighted that and posted it on TikTok. It could solely be for power, which to me sounds so much more disturbing. I mean, sexually is horrific, but just for no motive other than power and boredom, that is almost more disturbing than having a very set in stone motive behind what you're doing. Because I cannot confidently say what Joshua's motive was.
Even in part 1 of this docu-series, I voluntarily lent my story to this conversation as a means and an attempt of showing that I am a survivor of brutal, life-altering abuse, and that grooming of any kind is serious. I thought if I lend my voice and my experience there, it would help support people. Knowing that, Johnny essentially used even my experience to say that his perception of how he alleges he was groomed by a big ego is more disturbing than sexual grooming. That tweeting to a man with a big ego or getting a ball of duct tape and shit posting on a Twitter account is somehow more disturbing than being f***ing raped. He has a track record of trying to one-up victims as if it's the f***ing victim Olympics. Now, I need to stress that the reason I'm talking to Adam and not Johnny about this, which I originally intended to interview Johnny again, but I didn't do that because number 1, I don't trust Johnny to ever answer me honestly anymore. And number 2, Johnny weaponizing all these stories the way that he has real effects and will continue to have real effects on the people he is purposefully using as shields. And you know what? Number 3, Johnny trying to weaponize behind my back to victims, trying to make it sound like our 6-hour interview makes him more important. Because of that, Johnny doesn't get to speak with me anymore. Do y'all remember back to the beginning where I shared that we believe Johnny likely doctored evidence by way of deleting Twitter DMs he had with Josh before sending them to me? Well, the truth is, and I think we're deep enough into this that I can say this quite clearly, I feel like Johnny lies to me about like everything. And I want to show you that my team and I did absolutely everything in our power to try to make Johnny's story make sense. So I asked Johnny this. Do you still have, I'm just curious, do you still have your text conversations with Josh?
That I can check because my old MacBook Pro revived itself and I have to move quick and in small segments. So I really wanted to get the Colleen information, the meat and potatoes.
So aside from a few edits for pacing, that was Johnny's complete answer to me asking him if I could see his text messages with Joshua David Evans, which I found interesting. Afterwards, I messaged Johnny asking if he had a specific text message from Joshua, which he sent to me pretty quickly. And it's like, well, how could that be if he hadn't looked to see if he had text messages from Josh on his old computer? 10 days later, I had a phone call with Johnny and then confirmed this in text. I said, let me know if you're able to grab any text messages. And he responded, so far no luck, but if I get my hands on any, they'll go straight your way. I mean, this looks like he lied to me, right? On that phone call and in text. We know that he has at the very least some text messages between him and Josh. He should know that we know that because he sent it to us previously.
I just found the text message where he asked me to run the account and gave me the account information, which he tried to gloss over and pretend didn't happen, but I have the proof now.
Now, let me be blunt. I don't believe Johnny has trouble accessing his old messages at all. In fact, I believe Johnny is not only accessing his old texts on an old computer, but also has full and complete access to those same messages on his newer computer that doesn't have any function problems. iMessages opens on whatever device you log in on, okay? Detective Swoop is like, yeah, okay.
I had run Twitter accounts for him that he encouraged and he asked me to run for him. I just found the text message where he asked me to run the account.
So when I asked Johnny if he could send me the text messages between him and Josh about the Saradiculous account, he sent me a screenshot of his old computer with iMessages open in the background and a shot of their text exchange about Sarah D. But then my team and I noticed that the open text window he's showing has an iPhone file name at the top, indicating that this was a screenshot that was taken with his phone, which then made us think he has access to his old messages with Josh on his phone, took a screenshot of it, put it on his old computer, and then took a photo of it all together to make it look like he can only access it on his old computer, not his phone. Then we looked even closer. The iMessage window that is open behind it, that has the exact same screenshot of the Sarah D conversation in his messages with a larger blue bubble under it, meaning Johnny has sent this same screenshot of his messages with Josh to someone else. I don't know who, doesn't matter. But I still couldn't shake the suspicion that he's lying about having easy access to all of his old messages. So I looked even closer. Okay, so stay with me, okay, Detective Swoop, okay, we're doing this. So when you zoom in on the screenshot he sent, you can see this shape. It's a dark silhouette of a tree on a mountain. How do I know this? Because it's the default Mac El Capitan operating system desktop image. Yes, I'm a thorough bitch. And I remember when I saw this before in Johnny's post of the Trisha Paytas nude pics that he made on Twitter. When you zoom in, you can see that identical tree shape in the desktop background, and the iMessages bar has the same green half gradient at the top. I believe these to be the messages displayed on that same old computer. Now, here's where things get really up. John told me that he had sent a private apology video to Ella apologizing for when he and Colleen were bullying Ella behind her back. I asked to verify it and he sent me 2 clips. The first was him filming a computer that had the old messages pulled up, where he's scrolling through the messages and giving commentary to Ella about those messages. This was odd because in the video, the computer is clearly different. It looks to be like an iMac or at least an Apple display, and you can see the background is different. That's a sandy beach scene with sand at the bottom and clear blue water at the top. And the iMessages window is in dark mode, not the white iMessages window from his previous screenshots, which means, in my opinion, Johnny Silvestri not only has access to his old text messages on his old computer, he also has instant access on his newer computer, which he's never claimed gives him any trouble. Furthermore, this would also mean that Johnny Silvestri would also likely have access to his old messages on his phone because it's Apple. Just log in. A perfect example of this can be seen in Johnny's Ella story. In those screenshots that he tweeted, those were from his newer computer. They have the same Sandy Beach scene that matches his video that he allegedly sent Ella privately. These tweets were not from his old computer, and they happen to have older timestamps than the screenshots that he sent me of his old computer messages. Like literally, newer messages are showing up on the old computer and older messages are showing up on the new computer. Make it make sense. So all I can think at this point is that he can get the old shit on a new machine. So 10 days after Johnny sent me the Sarah D screenshot, I had a phone call with Johnny and I asked him if he could send me his text messages with Josh, and he blamed the old computer again.
And it's tricky because if I move it a little bit, it shuts off completely.
He then confirmed this after when I text, let me know if you're able to grab any of those text messages. And he responded, so far no luck, but if I get my hands on any, they'll go straight your way. Now it clearly appears to us that Johnny has access to his old messages. So why, when I ask for messages specifically pertaining to Joshua, the man he's accused of grooming him, of being a predator and worse than Colleen, why is he still tap dancing around this very simple question? Why won't he send me the messages? Do you still have your text conversations with Josh?
That I can check.
Now, my team and I believe one of two things: that Johnny either doesn't have any texts with Josh at all and he's weaponizing the idea of having them to the public for drama, or maybe more likely, he absolutely has his texts with Josh and it looks an awful lot like his Twitter DMs. A whole lot of messages from Johnny and a complete lack of response from Joshua. As Johnny himself described in our interview, it would be nothing but blue bubbles.
Up until this point, I've faced a lot of friendships that were very one-sided. You'll see so many texts where I'll literally send Colleen, you know, happy birthday, or it's just embarrassing to see so many blue text bubbles. And then it's like, am I being annoying? Am I like harassing this person? Do they like not want anything to do with me?
Now, I think along with other statements Adam has made in our second interview that this was all part of a strategic plan. A plan that Johnny crafted to build up an audience and slowly release more and more salacious content and receipts to get more clicks, likes, views, and attention.
His overall aim was to build an audience and then make the Josh video. And he had made that very clear.
I was able to revive my old MacBook Pro that I haven't been on for like 3 years. I've come across gold, if you will. Or I've struck gold is the correct saying.
We also did not know that he was making a plan and plotting to build up an audience to then do the Joshua, because when we saw the first Joshua post that he did, it sounded very much like, you know, I didn't know I was going to talk about this. This is all coming very suddenly. I wasn't expecting this. I quite literally think he starts that video saying those things. And
I never really wanted to make this video or ever intended on making a video like this about this situation.
But to hear that that was something that he was strategizing from the beginning. Now, I was going to come on here and say, hey, Johnny, stop hiding. If you truly are an open book, as you told me, then just post all of your old messages with Josh. Since your story is apparently so similar to Adam, why don't you just scroll through them like Adam painstakingly did with all of his messages with Colleen? It was the most brilliantly transparent thing I think I've ever seen somebody do. Thank you, Adam. But then I realized if Johnny was likely willing to remove Twitter DMs and manipulate that narrative, then there is now no world in which, if Johnny did release his text with Joshua, that I would ever believe they weren't in some way manipulated as well. Johnny has ruined any amount of credibility he had with us. His words hold no weight, and he did this to himself. I'm gonna backtrack a little to Johnny's stories about his private correspondence with Colleen Ballinger. Johnny makes it sound as if the two of them were almost exclusively talking shit about other fans or talking shit about her ex-husband Josh. I think these clips I'm about to play are interesting for a few reasons. Number one, they really highlight the mean girl type atmosphere Colleen and Corey seem to have fostered for years.
Kind of a realization for me right now. I didn't really hang out or talk to Colleen unless we were talking poorly about someone. Where friends of his like Rebecca Zamalo came up to me during VidCon, and her words, something along the lines of, "You are so much funnier than Josh." Rebecca is a nasty person because she social climbed her way up, she used them, and she is in a lot of the behind the scenes garbage of why their relationship went so south. There was never, to my knowledge, anything weird between her and Josh going on, but she instigated a lot of the issues between him and Colleen and enjoyed it. She took pride in it and put Colleen in some very dangerous situations.
Number two, it really sets the stage for when we're going to talk about the exact dynamic of how Johnny's opinion of Joshua David Evans evolved after mean girling with Colleen. And number three, it taught me a little bit more about Johnny Silvestri himself. When your relationship with Josh came to an end, when did you really pull towards Colleen as a friend?
I'm not a kid anymore. They're already having like adult conversations with me. It was mean, nasty conversations, but to me, the fact that they were having them with me, I was like, okay, I'm in now. Anytime we'd be talking, she'd say horrible things about other YouTubers, which include people like Gabby Hanna, Nikita Dragon, Manny MUA, to name a few. If we weren't talking shit about her ex-husband, it was about YouTubers. The girl who I was sent nudes of was kind of on a watch list as like an obsessive fan. So I was like, okay, this is part of my job, so I'm gonna be on the lookout. But Colleen takes it the extra step, decides to make fun of her, and shares her nudes with me. The girl is covering herself, covering her chest with her hands, but she's still completely exposed.
So if you didn't catch that, Colleen Ballinger is, or at least was, allegedly collecting her fans' nudes and sending them to her friends, not just Trish. So then we find ourselves at the Trisha Paytas story. Now first let me say, I know Trisha Paytas has some shit in her past, but for this doc, I don't care. Trisha Paytas is another victim in this story, and that's all I'm focused on. So we all know that Colleen sent Trisha's nude photos to Johnny without Trisha's consent.
You'll see so many texts where I'll literally send Colleen, you know, happy birthday, and a month goes by and then I get a nude of Trisha Paytas.
How do we know these messages exist? Because Johnny posted the screenshots of some of the texts where Colleen sent the pics all over his Twitter page, applying what I consider to be a disrespectful level of inadequate censoring. Now this actually got Johnny suspended from Twitter for a day, so you know, at least he's on brand. But would y'all like me to drop an exclusive bomb on this part of the story, the Trisha Paytas part of the story? In all the videos, the reacts, the TikToks, the private phone call with Adam, in all of Johnny's statements about these Trisha photos, from what we've seen, Johnny has never once admitted to all of you, the public, that he also initiated sending nudes unprovoked. He's kept that hidden, but for whatever reason, he admitted it to me in our interview. I guess 6 with Swoop gets the people talking.
If I'd find a photo, I'd follow Trisha, so if she'd post something publicly, or sometimes I would literally just go to Google and type in like Trisha Paytas nude, but I never did it to body shame Trish. I will say on one account, there was something that was nasty of me that I said, in regards to her body.
Yeah, Johnny, as an adult, would Google Trisha Paytas' nudes and send her photos back to Colleen, but somehow wasn't body shaming Trish in the process, something he has withheld from the public, and I wonder why.
I would go the extra lengths, find my own picture to send back, and I'd be like, hey girl, you know, like, posted a new Instagram, how do I look? And then she'd be like, oh my god, you're dumb, but you looked hot. Just little things like that.
Just little things like that. Listen, I know he said he was an employee and he was under Colleen's spell, and there's some truth to that. It appears Colleen was a very manipulative person, but Johnny is still, to this day, when he shouts from the rooftops that he knows right from wrong and everybody should take accountability, he's still referring to downloading and sending someone's nude pics back and forth to shame a woman without her consent as just little things.
Just little things like that.
And he did this as a whole grain oats adult ass man. And just for clarity on that, when you would like send a photo back, was that of Trisha?
Yeah, and usually it was just like I have one screenshot that I saw that I had sent, and it's literally just like, Trisha butt ass naked with like a giant smile on her face. And I forget exactly what I said, but the caption was just something like, felt cute.
To be clear, he said he has a screenshot of him initiating the sending of a Trisha pic, but for some reason he couldn't muster the strength to post that one to the public with the rest of the other ones. I mean, for f***'s sake, Johnny literally tweeted over a month ago that, quote, the fact that Colleen Ballinger, who has an audience of children, decided to make a podcast with a porn star in the first place is questionable. I just like, how much more can you victimize Trish in this story, John? Let me just run down the checklist. Let's see, he told Adam his story is more important than Adam's. Check. Claimed big ego grooming is a thing that's worse than grooming. Check. Shamed and claimed domestic abuse survivors are just mad because they around and found out. Check. Shamed a grown-ass woman's decision to be an online sex worker? Check. I mean, I don't know, man. There's an awful lot of shaming going on in present adult man day, if you ask me, but what do I know, right? I'm just the one who spent more time interviewing you than anyone else was willing to on the planet. Around and find out, right? After Johnny says he has a screenshot of him sending unsolicited Trish pics, he says this.
I did that because I knew if I was being nasty about somebody that I would get attention.
Johnny just said that he would initiate sending Trish pics without her consent to Colleen Ballinger to get attention from Colleen, and this went on for years.
Up until 2020.
Was this Colleen's influence and conditioning? Maybe. Does that excuse it? Nope.
However, I have a lot of people coming at me like, you were an adult, you knew better. Sure, that's a fair argument, but...
After hearing all of this from Johnny, I had to ask Adam if Johnny had ever told him any of this.
Swoop, I can't even say to you, this makes me so, angry that this is the second time on this call with you today that I'm saying a similar thing where he has told us both two different stories. He told me, oh, well, what you did was really bad, but Colleen used to just send them to me and make me really uncomfortable.
He told you that you did something bad in that situation?
He told me that I was the one being inappropriate, whereas Colleen was harassing him with them because me and Colleen, and I'd said this on the record, it was our in-between bit back and forth, right? I was 14, she was whatever, 30-something, it was 14, 30-something. And Johnny said to me that basically I was acting inappropriate and he was being harassed by Colleen sending them to him, and our stories were different. So if I was going to go on the record with it, I had to make that distinction. So that makes me so angry knowing that not only again with the other one, but this time that you were told a different story than what I would.
I'm actually legitimately speechless, but I know I have to say something. I cannot believe that he told you to your face that you were inappropriate. You were a child. What Colleen was doing, allegedly, I have to say that, is illegal. It's a crime. It is an actual crime. You have absolutely no fault in that. I cannot believe that he literally blamed and victim shamed a child for receiving pornographic materials. That makes me absolutely sick. It would be really easy for me to show you guys how mad I am right now, even listening back to that clip, but I think I'm ready to level with all of you and share a thought that I've had through all of this on the keenest observation one can make about Johnny Silvestri. When you look at the bigger picture, Johnny Silvestri, in my opinion and my team's opinion, is a leech, allegedly. He got his start on YouTube World by trying to network with Joshua David Evans as a teen. And when that situation did not go the way he wanted it to, he made the decision when he was an adult to begin joining in on harassing Joshua on social media. He pivoted over to Colleen Ballinger and began trying to establish himself as an integral part of her world as what can generously be described as the second Corey DeSoto, but less clever. Like, he's literally like a diet Corey DeSoto, only with that shitty pink pack of saccharin instead of like the Splenda.
I struck out with Josh. Maybe Colleen can be my redemption, which is what inspired me and encouraged me to put myself out there to work for her.
When that didn't work, he moved to California, where he lived closer to a man named Tim Connolly, his best friend since around 2013. In 2020, still clinging to the Colleen Ballinger dream ticket, Johnny Silvestri supported Colleen when Adam first came forward with allegations against her and publicly shamed Adam for speaking out. At some point between then and now, something happened where Johnny and Tim stopped being friends, and somewhere around January of this year, it became incredibly clear to Johnny that he no longer had a place in Colleen Ballinger's world. And when Adam's story came back around this year, just a few months after whatever that falling out was with Colleen, it truly does appear like Johnny was able to finally snap back at every single person he had leeched onto the entire time he'd been trying to make it in entertainment that he believed wronged him in some way. Joshua David Evans didn't take Johnny with him, therefore Joshua is a groomer. Colleen Ballinger didn't welcome Johnny back, therefore she's his groomer, even though he's made it very clear that he wasn't close to her until he was an adult. And no, this doesn't absolve Colleen at all. She groomed the hell out of Adam and has yet to take accountability. Now, back to Johnny. Tim Connolly might actually be a groomer, but you can't deny there's a running trend in Johnny Silvestri's life that everyone he hates is a groomer, even if in cases like Joshua David Evans, there is no evidence that Johnny was groomed by him. And so now, think about everything I just said. Think about the quote parallels that Johnny has brought to the surface here that he claims to have with Adam McIntyre. You see it in the evolution of how Johnny tells the Trisha Paytas story, because if what Adam's telling me is accurate, and I have no reason to believe that it's not, then Johnny has literally stolen part of Adam's story and recounted it back to me in an interview. If I'm right about my suspicions, then I think it's safe to say that Johnny has once again leeched onto someone else in hopes that it's going to bring him success, and that person is Adam McIntyre, a literal victim of childhood grooming who Johnny has made very clear to me, and maybe by now to you watching, is somebody he hopes to emulate to reach greater heights. And I am speaking up now and putting all of this information out there to all of you because, make no mistake, it is incredibly likely that if Johnny Silvestri isn't stopped now with what he's doing, if he doesn't change and take accountability, he's probably going to find a way to accuse Adam of grooming, and we're not about to let that happen. And if you have any doubts about why I needed to call Adam McIntyre with this, it's because this is a genuine concern that I have. I presented this theory to Adam, and here's what he had to say. In a way, even in the interview, Johnny had told me that he, for so much of his life, he chases after people, and then he discovers the fandom, and then he's chasing after Colleen, and then chasing after Josh, and maybe, I don't know, chasing after you by attaching his story so closely to yours. I don't want to make that assumption that you might feel that way.
Well, I'll make the assumption chasing after the #1 spot. I think the perfect example of this was the H3 podcast. When H3 had Oliver, Becky, and Johnny on, the reason I couldn't be there, hand to God, was because I was at Disneyland. I'm very glad that I was at Disneyland, because when I watched it back, there's only so much that Ethan Klein or the crew can do to direct Johnny from hogging that mic mama. So many people were publicly tagging me in tweets and tagging Oliver and Becky and being like, sorry you didn't get a chance to speak. Unless he was the #1 from the get-go, showed me that you were looking at this as key players, orchestrative, like a big movement that there's, you know, people controlling it. And it just always came across to me like he wasn't going to be happy unless he was the number one. And please God, he can take it off me. I don't want it.
I can't stress this enough. I really wanted to support Johnny through all of this. That's why I sat there for 6 straight hours. But so many of his words just honestly broke my heart.
I don't feel great that I used Trish at her expense, but I guess what does help me sleep at night is knowing that I wasn't friends with Trish. She was just this untouchable public figure to me.
Does that make it okay? After hearing this, I wanted to ask Johnny something important. I'm curious to know, at what point did you have the realization that the sending of Trisha nudes was inappropriate?
Something always felt wrong morally deep down, but I think I was just more excited over the fact that it was a way to create a bond between me and these people.
Listen, I'm not going to get into body language shit. We will leave that to Observe and the behavioral panel, but I do find it so uncomfortable that Johnny is grinning ear to ear while he's saying this. And he continues. Well, when do you think that maybe it was in the last couple of years, did you have a moment where you were like, looking back at the nude photos thing and you thought, that's actually really wrong?
Watching Trisha's video, the difference between her and Colleen's videos were Colleen made an ass out of herself and thought she was being cute and funny and gonna have a little viral moment. Call Trish what you want, but I felt the authenticity and I felt the hurt. And
Trisha, she came off devastated. Well, now that Trisha has made a video, Trisha is a victim in this story. Wanted to ask if there might be a time where you might consider taking those tweets down now that they kind of have served their purpose.
Some of them did get taken down. That is actually why I was put in Twitter jail, because of some of the photos. And I was like, are you effing kidding me? It just seemed stupid to me because I was like, okay, I get it. But also, these are crucial to my story. Just hearing your perspective, you're someone I really respect a lot. And so I will say with Trisha, I did have a better idea of how this plays out.
I don't think this is bringing her peace, having them out.
Yeah, I didn't think they'd bring her peace. I'll be honest. It was just a piece of all of this. So I saw Trisha's video and I was like, well, that's great.
Now, about 12 hours after I said that to John, he deleted all but one of the Trisha photos. He just couldn't help himself and leave one. And my favorite part, the next day, he went on the H3 podcast and literally used my words that they've served their purpose to white knight himself and make it sound like he decided all on his own that the right thing to do is take them down.
It was a whole thing. Now I've taken the pictures down because I don't, they've served their purpose, right?
Now, I just want to say to Trisha, I am sorry you ever had to go through this. To be betrayed by someone you thought was your friend for so many years is truly awful. And to have it exploited by a man like this with no consideration to your feelings as a human being is deplorable. I hope that you are able to find some healing in this. And if you would ever like to talk, my door is absolutely open. Now, I'd like to talk a little more about Johnny allegedly co-opting victims' stories to prop up his own because, competition. I've mentioned how he continually compares his own story to Adam's, something he has done in most every public appearance he's made, but then recently lied about doing that on his Twitter account.
And this just goes to show the parallels between Adam and I's stories. We both experienced 2 separate things with the Ballinger family and many others, but our stories align and they're very similar.
There were many moments of I would say something and then he would be like, oh my God, yeah, that happened to me, but it was 10 times worse.
Now, I've spoken to other people who have not given Johnny permission to use their stories. Both of these people claimed that Johnny has co-opted their stories on podcasts, TikTok live streams, Do We Know Them podcast. He even did it in our interview. Both people allege that Johnny is using their stories without their consent, and both say that Johnny is flat out lying anytime he refers to either of them as Joshua's victims. One of them has provided me with screenshots of her DMs with Johnny, where she explicitly told him to stop sharing her story publicly, period. Now, I've kept their names anonymous because both of them have also told me that they are legitimately afraid of Johnny retaliating against them. Remember when we heard another victim come forward and say that they were afraid of Johnny retaliating? These people don't know each other, and they all use the same language and that word retaliating. Now, the first woman I spoke to saw the social media firestorm that ensued the week of June 3rd when Cody Tyler posted their video about why they left the Colleen Ballinger fandom, and Johnny Silvestri, who on June 7th released his initial allegations of grooming against Joshua on Twitter. This tweet inspired the woman, who was a former fan of Colleen and Josh's, to reach out to Johnny privately on June 8th about a story in which she alleged that Joshua had been weird with her on social media. Now, you might know about this woman's story if you listen to the Do We Know Them podcast, because she's the person who Josh sent a few inappropriate tweets to back in 2013 when she was only 14, including a comment where he said, quote, "Your profile pic just turned me on." Johnny shared her story on a podcast that, as of me writing this, has been viewed over 250,000 times without her consent. Now, to be clear, the hosts of the podcast, Lily and Jesse, were unaware of these conversations because Johnny, to our knowledge, did not give them the full story. Now, I spoke to this woman who has chosen to remain anonymous, but has also not only provided us with a statement, she also provided us with her Twitter DM correspondence with Johnny to confirm that this conversation happened.
So regarding Josh, I was a huge fan of Josh and Colleen around 2012, 2014-ish. Regarding the profile picture turning him on tweet, I very rarely had my profile picture as myself. Most likely this was a photo of Josh and he was referring to himself. I think anything that Josh has said and done regarding me was done with good and comedic intentions, which looking back now does not translate well, obviously. But I do not think that Josh has been a pedophile or a predator or a groomer in relation to this situation. I also want to say that regardless of anyone else's opinion on this, I have spoken with Josh privately and he has apologised, and I accept this apology. I believe that this is all that matters in relation to my story. I do not want to keep talking about it. Josh and I have made peace, and it is so annoying to keep seeing Johnny talk about something that is none of his business. I initially, as anyone would, when I saw these tweets that Josh had tweeted me as an adult, I was really angry and my emotions were running very high. So I messaged Johnny as he had a relationship with Josh, and I remembered him from years ago when I was an active fan online. I did describe it as weird and I was upset. In hindsight, I wish I'd sat with it a bit more and didn't relay my raw thoughts and feelings to a stranger or acquaintance, and instead went to Josh himself or people in my personal life, and that's something that I do regret. Johnny then asked if he could use these tweets. I said no, but he could refer to them. He then said, "I don't want to put you in any harm's way, so I'll leave these between us." And that's a direct quote. Later, I realised I did not want him to even refer to them, but assumed because of his message he wouldn't tweet about it anyway.
So, to be clear, she initially told Johnny he could mention her story, but only in broad terms and without dragging her name into it. She later changed her mind, but didn't expect Johnny to tweet about it given the way their conversation ended. But a week later, on June 15th, Johnny tweeted this: "I literally have photo proof of this man tweeting a 14-year-old child at the time that they turned him on. He's just as weird. He left the spotlight to hide because they had skeletons too." Because Johnny used direct quotations in the tweets, people began searching on Twitter for variations of @JoshuaDtown turns me on, and found the original post, which included our speaker's real name. Now, she wrote Johnny back on June 15th, quote, "Hey, you mentioned that you were going to leave those tweets between us. I know I said you can refer to it if you need it, and that still would have been fine, but would have appreciated the heads up. Also, the tweet in question mentions my profile picture turning him on. It is a very weird phrase to say to a minor, yes, but there is no way of knowing what profile picture I had at the time. I didn't usually have my own face as my profile picture, but sometimes I did. I really do doubt that he would say that about me publicly." Now, just to clarify, we were able to confirm that it was a photo of Josh that was used as her profile photo. Now, I can't share how we confirm this in order to protect our speaker. It's kind of up to them to let that information out if they choose to, but this is information Johnny could have found himself if he bothered to research anything. Then the woman tells Johnny in no uncertain terms to delete the tweet and, quote, "I no longer want it even referred to. The stress this has caused me, even with as little eyes on it as possible, is just not worth it. Thank you." To which Johnny responded,
So Johnny then said, "I'm sorry, I just couldn't hold back. I just couldn't not use this valuable information, and I will no longer bring this situation up because I do not want it to be causing you any harm or stress. He also said this before going on the podcast, so he obviously went back on his word.
Like, there's a lot of who I have dragged in, and it doesn't feel good, but what I hope people understand, and luckily for me, what the people who did unfortunately get dragged in, they understand.
Luckily for me speaks volumes. 2 weeks after she asked him to stop, on June 28th, 2023, Johnny shared her story again on the Do We Know Them podcast. All 250,000 plus viewers. And it was at Joshua's request that the offending statement be removed, which Lily and Jesse eventually did.
And he also said, I haven't told a single person at shoot or shared the screenshot she sent me, and I promise to keep it that way, end quote. So he said that and very clearly lied to me about it, because that is exactly what he did. Or if he wasn't lying then, he went back on his word.
And to make matters worse, Johnny went so far as to say to me that his reason for sharing this person's story wasn't to help them, it was to help himself.
And for me, it was really, really difficult. I got this information and I was like, holy shit, like, this is really crucial for, backing up my stories with Josh.
So before he sent me this message, he tweeted again about another tweet about me. This was 20 minutes before he'd sent me this message, basically saying I'll never do it again. But I sent him that message asking him to leave it 2 hours before, and he just ignored me and kept the tweet up. From what I remember, he just ignored it.
Johnny, as of me recording this, still has not deleted the tweets talking about the story where he has created a victim out of thin air.
I'm still quite angry, but I've kept him muted and haven't been watching any videos that relate to him. I asked him not to, and he still did.
And after she rescinded consent, he became incredibly dismissive and arrogant about what he had done to her.
Then I woke up the next morning and the girl is totally backtracking, and she's like, no, please, like, don't share the images or whatever. I never promised, and I can't promise that I won't speak about these situations. If it took a legal turn and I was being addressed by a legal team, sorry girl, I did not approach you. I didn't even follow you anymore, and you sent me this information.
He did not stand by his word. There was no legal team addressing him yet. But I guess, sorry girl, it's all your fault.
It has caused me quite a lot of upset and stress, and to be honest, I didn't want to have to come out with any of this stuff. I'm now doing it to hopefully clear Josh's name, to be honest. I don't believe that Josh had those intentions, and it has been told from a perspective that I am not happy with, and I just want it to go away. I do feel like I have been forced to come out because of worries about my privacy. I am doing this because I feel like my side of all of this just hasn't been told, so I hope that this helps. I just want it to stop. I want him to stop talking about it because I didn't want him to talk about it in the first place.
And then, according to the DMs she shared with us, after making another plea for him to remove his posts, he left her on red, essentially doxed her, and he ghosted her. Let that sink in. Now, the story comes with a bit of a caveat. I actually conducted an interview with this person that was already edited into the script, but at the last minute, they revoked consent to have their story be shared, which I agreed to, no problem, okay? I respect that, because it really is that easy, Johnny. However, I kindly asked if I could share this person's reasoning as to why they revoked consent, because I think it paints an even clearer picture of just how disturbing the Johnny Silvestri story is. Quote, "Hi, thank you for your response. For the sake of my mental health, I really think it would be best to remove my statements entirely. I don't mind if you mention my story vaguely, but I don't really want my audio on the record. Johnny has just been twisting the narrative so much, and I have no hope that he is going to stop, and I am fairly positive that my story will be invalidated by him and those who support him, and I truthfully just can't handle people coming at me at this time. I hope you understand. I really appreciate everything you're doing to bring the truth to light, and I wish I had the strength to contribute, but I just don't right now. This whole thing is a lot, and Johnny is becoming more and more cruel. First of all, You don't have to apologize to me for anything. You were brave to even allow me to share that part of your story. Thank you. Now, afterwards, they said we could speak about their story in generalities. This person also alleged that Johnny attempted to weaponize their story in an attempt to obtain more ammunition, which I'm just now realizing is a word that Johnny uses a lot in regards to weaponizing other people's statements against them. At first, they told us that they were shocked by and supportive of Johnny's claims against Josh, but eventually became even more disturbed by Johnny's behavior when they believe Johnny began to publicly say that Joshua had multiple victims, and that when Johnny was talking about this, he was talking about their experience, which scared the hell out of this person, because not only had they never told Johnny that they were a victim, they didn't believe they were in the slightest. So to be clear, this is yet another person who does not see themselves as a victim being co-opted by Johnny Silvestri for his own gain. And someone so afraid of Johnny retaliating just for telling the f***ing truth that they don't even want to risk Johnny identifying who they are at all. But they did also ask us to tell Johnny directly, quote, "You have to stop doing this. You are hurting yourself. You are hurting other people and you're hurting yourself. I wish you would understand that you're doing more harm than good in this situation." The truth is, both of these people basically told us the same thing. They are afraid of Johnny Silvestri, of Johnny taking their stories, their own agency, and their experiences in what at least one of them has explicitly called Johnny's quest for revenge against Joshua. They are literally telling him that he is hurting them. He is victimizing these people and it needs to stop. Johnny, leave these people alone, period. If they get further exposed, the world will know that it was you behind it. Leave them alone. I don't want to put words or emotions in your mouth. Have you ever felt afraid of Johnny or trapped being able to express how you feel?
I've never felt trapped by him. I've just felt he's been incredibly irritating. I can't feel trapped by him even though he's been subtweeting me. My opinion of him in that retrospect is just that he comes across as very irritating because I'm not getting to the bottom of anything. So I don't feel trapped by him, because to feel trapped by him, I would feel that there was something I was missing or whatever. But in actuality, it's just Johnny not being honest. And to me, that is not someone that's threatening to me. That is someone that's just very irritating.
Now, as always with the docs in this series, I want to make a direct statement to Colleen Ballinger. Colleen, my DMs are open if you ever want to speak. I've already messaged you a couple of times for comment. Now, if you want a model for how I would treat you in an interview, it'll probably be somewhere between how we exposed the devil in your shadow here and the more sit-down exposed nature of what's coming in part 4. Let's talk. There are a lot of people who deserve to hear from you. Now, back to Johnny though. I can't shake the nagging feeling when listening back to the 6 hours that I was speaking to Johnny Silvestri that almost all of his language in referring to Josh tied back to social media and YouTube. He's pointed out Josh's follow count on multiple occasions.
I have 13,000 followers on Twitter right now. I had 1,000 last month. Maybe 50 of them were active. You are coming at me from a Twitter account with like over 200,000 followers. How is that fair? You can't tell me that a guy who's just trying to live a quiet little life in Georgia with his new wife, why not delete that Twitter account where you have hundreds of thousands of eyes on you?
It seems like a kind of a tricky position if you were to just delete everything.
Oh, I think it would be a very dangerous thing to delete his Twitter account now. Why not delete that Twitter account? Don't go to a Twitter account where you have 250,000 followers and start tweeting from it if you don't like the attention. He's tweeting these apologies out to a Twitter account with hundreds of thousands of viewers. You are actively choosing to be a part of this narrative now. You know, yes, he got brought into it, or he's gotten dragged through the mud by me.
He keeps making references to how he viewed Joshua and later Colleen as his meal ticket or his ticket to stardom and his fantasy.
This was my ticket to success, my ticket to happiness. No one could take it away from me. I was trying to like create the fantasy I wanted, but it was just continuously being dragged down.
And he also mentioned that an appropriate means for Josh to respond instead of a DM would have been for Josh to make a YouTube video. What actions would you like to see Josh do that would signal to you he's changed, that accountability is being taken?
When I said jail, I thought of him sitting in this jail cell. So like that was kind of nice to like think about him doing that. But jokes aside, I don't know. It's got to be for him. It can't be what I want, you know? I think in order to heal, he has to live his true, authentic self. You had a platform. You know how to turn a camera on, and you know how to sit down in front of it and press record and make a video. I haven't wanted to make these videos. Tweeting is not a good way of expressing yourself. So I would have really just liked to person-to-person talk to him over the phone. If that was not an option, personally, I don't know if I would have wanted to do that. So I would have really just liked to person-to-person talk to him over the phone. Personally, I don't know if I would have wanted to do that. So I think the next step I would have done as Joshua was to make a video.
Now, I find that last point a bit disturbing because he said this merely days after Joshua David Evans made a tweet in support of Colleen victims saying, "I have no desire to use this as a catalyst for a YouTube comeback. It's not a safe place for me." Joshua closely ties his own well-being to not putting out YouTube content, something Joshua very much clarified with me, and something Johnny knows and even acknowledged in the interview. You mentioned making a video, Josh making a video as a potential thing that he could do.
Well, I think more like he should have.
Well, that he should have.
Yeah, redundant, to me at least.
He did intimate that he didn't want to make a video because he didn't want to be back on the internet in that capacity.
I just can't be here now. I gotta go find some kind of peace, because I don't feel any peace right now.
If I just said, okay, Josh, sure, everything's fine, he would have had his redemption era and he would have come back to the internet. Full swing.
You believe that he would, so you don't believe when he says that he has no intention of coming back to the internet. I believe he called it an unsafe place for him. I believe he was alluding to his mental health and his sobriety.
Wow, so I mean, why
but you don't believe that.
Why is he trying to create a safe space in it then? Leave it alone if you think it's dangerous. I think he's a liar. You know, yes, he got brought into it, or he's gotten dragged through the mud by me. You know how to turn a camera on, and you know how to sit down in front of it and press record and make a video.
This is Johnny literally asking someone to harm themselves for him, probably so that he can make a react video and get that bag, baby. And whether anyone believes it's deserved or not in retaliation to Joshua David Evans, it's just so incredibly cruel to me that somebody would say that knowing he has a history with suicide ideations. In our interview, I asked Johnny multiple times what could be done for him to finally make peace with Joshua. Joshua has apologized privately and publicly to Johnny 4 times, and in the meantime, since Joshua apologized, Johnny has called Joshua a groomer, a pedophile, an abuser, and so much more, with little to no evidence. Not even a verbal accusation that makes sense. Johnny Silvestri has literally harassed Joshua David Evans for months. To put it very bluntly, given everything that we have investigated, we believe Johnny Silvestri has likely defamed someone publicly, likely with malicious intent, which means that the only adult in this story who has likely committed a civil wrong is Johnny Silvestri, where Joshua David Evans could seek damages. Let me read this from the Cornell Law School, and you tell me. To prove prima facie defamation, a plaintiff must show 4 things. Number 1, a false statement purporting to be fact. Number 2, publication or communication of that statement to a third person. Number 3, fault amounting to at least negligence. And 4, damages or some harm caused to the reputation of the person or entity who is the subject of the statement. And even worse than all of this, what Johnny has done, in my opinion, has actually hurt victims everywhere. At any point in time during all of this, did you ever have the feeling that Johnny was posting as much as he was with the goal of getting attention or views or celebrity or status? Have you ever felt that way?
Don't look at me like that. Okay, I'll do like the journalistic approach where I like literally answer the question at hand. Yeah, nothing was good enough. Like if I retweeted something from him, I needed to retweet it more. If I had just done a video about Colleen, he had made the exact same one the next day. And it definitely felt that there was an abuse of my platform, and I think there was an abuse with your platform. And I think furthermore, I love Jesse and Lily, and it pains me that their podcast episode with Johnny is going to be on the wrong side of history here. At a certain stage, I just had to completely pull back from him, and that's what I did.
Now, about Joshua David Evans. I have made a very conscious decision throughout the course of this documentary to only allow Joshua David Evans to speak for himself in places that he spoke publicly. The reason is because by platforming Josh's story in this doc, we run the risk of turning this into a he said story. Now, why am I saying all of that? Because, well, Johnny told me this.
The world does want to hear Mr. Evans. The world wants to hear all of them.
So, here you go, Johnny.
Alrighty, Josh interview, take one.
My name is Joshua David Evans. I'm 39.
Joshua, we have a lot to talk about. Obviously, there are allegations that have been levied against you, and we're going to get into those, but you have also alleged that you are a victim as well, a victim of abuse, and that's something that I and my team take very seriously.
So I went from the boyfriend to the fiance to the husband to now I started to feel almost like a character, like I was replaceable. She loved the attention, she loved the status, but do I think she truly loves her fans? I never really felt like she did. I think she just loved what it gave her. She's having a few people over to the house, and I was like, who? They said, Eric. And when I walked through those doors, it reeked of alcohol and cigarettes. And no one was there. Nobody was there. And then I went upstairs, and she was sitting on our bed, playing her ukulele. As I was leaving, but I looked at her and I said, when you're effing Eric in our bed, I want you to think of me. I've lost everything. I lost my career. I lost everything that I built.
Johnny has accused you of some very serious allegations. He has accused you of grooming him. Do you agree with that characterization of you?
No. At first, it felt normal and chill to have, like, oh, that's Johnny. He's at the show. I didn't know that was going to be time and time and time again, that he would continuously show up at these shows. He's out there dragging my name publicly, calling me a little bitch. Everyone's like, poor Johnny, I can't believe Josh just abandoned you. And I'm like, who do you think you are? My life was wrecked.
Yes, I sat down with Joshua David Evans in an exclusive interview. In fact, since Johnny seems to think that the length of my interviews determines how important someone is, this exclusive interview with Joshua went 7 hours. You're welcome, Johnny. And I did not go easy on Joshua in this exclusive interview in the slightest. This interview is brutal. This interview is emotional, and most importantly, this interview is honest, something I never got in 6 hours with Johnny Silvestri. Is there anything that you would want to say directly to Johnny?
No, he means nothing to me, just like he did a couple weeks ago.
I think there's something to be said about what I feel is part of the root of all of this, the culture that Colleen Ballinger and her content fostered. Sometimes it's difficult to see the line of where her influence ends and these stories begin, but it troubles me greatly, and as much as I can, I still want to believe that somewhere inside Johnny is a hurting man who still has a chance to get the help he needs, and in time may find healing to that hurt. And that path starts with accountability. Johnny Silvestri embodies my "it's not drama, it's dangerous" mantra maybe better than anybody I have ever covered in these docs before, because in my opinion, Johnny turned his own drama into something dangerous. Now, if Johnny has trauma and he wants to express that to the world, he has the right to do that. I just want him to do it honestly, like everyone else, and in a way that doesn't negatively affect everyone's well-being that I have spoken to today. So now some tough love that I hope you take to heart as you venture on that path. I'm going to address you directly now, Johnny. I fought for you. We fought harder for you and gave you every possible chance we could to help you show your side, and you betrayed me. For 6 straight hours, you gaslit me, manipulated me, and made me afraid to tell the truth, and I should never be afraid to tell the truth. In my opinion, you used victims, you abused victims, and you crawled in the shadows amongst them to hide your sins. You told me your grooming was worse than me being sexually abused for years. You told me domestic survivors have a ticking clock. You came on my platform where I have a community of countless survivors watching who were ready to support you, and you dared to diminish them with your bullshit and degrade me to my face, all so that you could be the star of the show. You f***ed around with Swoop, and now you found out. But there's still time, Johnny. Do the right thing. Apologize, take accountability, and most of all, be honest with yourself. You cannot grow or change until you do these things, and I have to believe change is possible for everyone, even with you. The truth will set you free. Okay, as always, please excuse the brief tone shift as a bit of a palate cleanser for the things that I have to say that I do at the end of all of my docs, and then I will conclude with my final thoughts on this story. Yes, the brand new Petty University Valid collection is finally here. Thank you so much for your patience. So be sure to grab your pieces from the collection by tapping the link below. I hope they're just a constant reminder of just how powerful, brave, and valid you are. And again, as I mentioned, I will be making a personal donation in John Silvestri's name to RAINN, an organization devoted to protecting survivors. I am doing this in hopes that he can be honest with himself finally and get the help that he needs. I am also launching a brand new second channel that you can subscribe to right now, where I will be producing entire new docs on topics truly mind-bending, as well as interviews, and I hope you join me over there. It is also linked below. Be sure to tap my link below and check out SeatGeek and get $20 off any tickets at SeatGeek with promo code SWOOP, and treat yourself, honey. Now, let me please refocus the support and attention back on the victims: Adam, Becky, Ella, Oliver, Alex, and others who have and haven't come forward, because they are the most important priority. I did not expect this story to go this way at all. I want to believe in people's goodness, and thankfully, after spending so much time getting to know the stories of Adam, Becky, Oliver, Alex, Ella, and so many others, I know that all is not lost, because these are truly good people who were hurt by others but found their truth and their power in spite of it. Their pain is valid. Their voices are valid, and their strength is valid. I am so proud of all of them for standing up for themselves, even when at times the world doubted them. Nothing that that man has done takes away from their truth. Nothing. Thank you to all of you for watching, for giving me the space to share this story. I know it's been a long one. Be good to each other, hold each other up, and I will see you in part 4. Bye.